Hey, how's it going, you guys? Welcome back to some Hello Lady. We are finally in Eru's route, which I've heard is going to give us a lot of information about the game, and of course Saku's route too. But Eru's route's when we're gonna finally start learning some things, which I'm excited. I feel like we've already learned quite a bit about what's going on, especially that last route in Soriko. Oh my gosh, there was a lot of information there. But I am excited. I'm so down for Eru's route. She's been really funny, and I think it's gonna be nice to get to know her a little bit better. Uh, I've really gained a respect for every single girl that I've gone on the route so far. So Tamao and Soriko, like I've really got to see new sides of them. So I'm hoping we get to see more of like a softer, more personable side of Eru in her route. Just because she always seems like she's kind of a jokester. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this. Tokino Yomase was on her way back. I should probably give a pretext that this is right after we found out Taigi became one of the 7th Etoiles. So that's where we're at right now. Only she and the driver sat in the vehicle, but she found no joy in wasting time in pointless chatter. One of her core beliefs was that all resources were limited and that it was best to use them as effectively as possible. It was late at night, nearly midnight in fact. She'd spent a lot of time on a job that she had to take care of outside of the academy, which was a rarity for her. Outside Okushima, most roads were straight and barren. It wouldn't have taken more than half an hour before she went back at the academy, or she was back at the academy, but she still looked reasonably concerned.
陽性の出た候補は3人。うち2人はデリートか。
Dang. Striking again, COVID. The device in her hand displayed an immense amount of data, most of which were the results of the 140-second test. Since there was no RI or info layer support outside the academy, she had to control it with her hands. In the secret test conducted by the academy, it wasn't uncommon for there to be 0 positive cases. That was suboptimal, and they wanted at least 1 to survive. But that didn't always happen. However, this time the results were unexpected. There were 3 positives, and 2 of them died. Tokino attached the word disposed to the data of the 2 deceased individuals. Her hands moved mechanically and she felt nothing. She lived by logic and she never dedicated any mental or emotional resources to needless sentiments. In her mind, the main problem was the cause of the disposal. The 2 candidates had been killed by someone unknown, while the 3rd vanished without a trace.
近々サクたちに出動要請が入るかもしれんな。
Interesting. Okay, so this kind of puts into perspective what we saw at the start of the game, right? Where they had to kill that kind of person that was going crazy and stuff. It's a result of their experiments. Okay. It's kind of messed up if you think about it. The 3rd. The last one snuck by the observers and vanished before any supplementary tests could be carried out. It wasn't a simple attempt to run away from home that you would expect from someone in that age range, but a purposeful escape. Why? Well, it was pointless to think about their reasons. There were similar cases among those who had undergone ascension and manifest halos for the first time. To HMI's, ascension was a very dangerous moment. If their suddenly expanded possibilities were too much for them to handle, they lost control and acted aggressive, especially around fellow HMIs. That phenomenon had been dubbed Slider Syndrome. The 3rd had probably manifested a halo only for her to be incompatible with it and lose control. Otherwise known as S-type brain function disorder, Slider Syndrome was kind of a mental illness that was directly caused by the person's halo. Unfortunately, there was no known cure. Plus, the Academy had no need for people incompatible with the expanded world, so they didn't really care. HMIs who developed Slider Syndrome lost control over themselves and became unsociable machines who were loyal only to their desires, but they didn't lose their personalities or intelligence, which made them extremely dangerous. Since dealing with HMIs was a legal nightmare, the Academy took it upon themselves to dispose of such cases after getting a request from the HMI Countermeasures Task Force. The final solution was left to Saku Otonashi, or the other crowns, and so, that was what would eventually happen to the one who would escape. Based on previous cases, the chances of her having developed Slider Syndrome were at least over 30%. That meant that the Ascended HMIs, who were made up of 80% of the Academy student body, were champions who'd survived a trial by fire with a 35% chance of failure.
第142回試験で成果は出なかったということか。
Oh, frick. Right after she thought that, a shock from below made Tokino's world turn 180 degrees. The cause was an explosive pressure from below, a mine that the car drove over. It wasn't a proximity mine, however. It had clearly been activated remotely, which made it a trap set to blow up the car as it passed by. Mines were still a popular weapon of war that easily killed or neutralized enemies and created effective defensive lines. It was a manifestation of human wisdom focused on the act of murder. Many claim that their indiscriminate nature and the danger that they posed even after wars ended made them too violent, but there were significant efforts to ban their use, such as the Ottawa Treaty, but superpowers like the USA, China, and Russia took no part in it, though that in itself was proof of their effectiveness as weaponry. Japan was part of the treaty, however, so a mine couldn't exist on their land unless it was needed for research. However, just now, one had exploded on a Japanese road, raising a beastly German-made car into the air. A second later, after the scene that looked like an awful joke, gravity took over, making the Iron Beast draw an arc in the air as it crashed into the ground. Dang, we're already starting off this pretty interesting. Learned a little bit. Tokido had lost consciousness for several dozen seconds. In the flipped car, Tokido moaned as she tried to process the situation. She attempted to convince herself to stay reasonable even in a dire situation. No creature was uglier and more pathetic than a human who had lost their ability to think clearly. The car had flipped over, but its tough German frame protected her. She'd have died if she didn't have her seatbelt on. She couldn't move, so she undid her seatbelt and crawled out of the overturned car through the shattered window. The driver was still breathing. He too was fortunate enough to survive. However, due to the car having danced in the air, he wasn't in good condition. Crushed by the airbag, he fell unconscious. Tokido never once assumed that this was just an unfortunate accident. After all, she remembered the attack on her and Saku a month prior. While cursing her lack of care, she began to think. Since the attack, the Academy had become more wary of the AHN. If they planned something like this, they should have found out about it, but that didn't happen. Additionally, this attack has clearly targeted Tokido alone, and an employee of the Academy's schedule could have never have been leaked. Yeah, I hate to tell you, there's like two, at least that I know of. Regretting the fact that she hadn't brought an SSD with her, Tokido carefully crawled on the ground. Moving too quickly would have been reckless, so she held her breath, scanned her surroundings for hostiles, and slowly left the car, using it as a shield. Sitting on the ground, she raised her upper body, and once she finally felt alive again, she pulled out her portable device and tried to call emergency backup. A shadow suddenly loomed over her, effortlessly I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with that, drawing close enough to Tokido for her to feel the breath of the one who cast it. The simple fact almost made her stop breathing, but it was even worse when she realized that she knew the person. Not Narita, is it? Oh, frick, it is. Oh, so this is going a little bit differently than some of the other routes. He's just going for her. No. That odd transfer student didn't have such cold, terrifying eyes, and he didn't smile with so much scorn. Tokido Yomase didn't know any man who could make such a face. The eyes that looked down on Tokido were ice-cold and emotionless. The searing, boiling rage behind his expression was a mix of intense anger and resentment. It made chills run down her whole body. She didn't ask why he was here. That would have been pointless. In this abnormal situation, the man looked down at her with nightmarish eyes. It was readily apparent that he was the one responsible for what had happened. She'd asked why because she already figured that out, and the man was perceptive enough to know that. Dang, I didn't expect such a big event to happen so quickly. I'm really hoping we learn what her role was and everything that happened, because I don't think they've really thoroughly explained that yet. Like, we kind of just learned in Soriko's route that she was involved at all. We didn't know that before, or at least I didn't. Merely facing him brought about a sense of crushing despair. However, Tokido resisted it and glared back at him. Tokino's anger was as hot as it was just. To save many, you had to sacrifice a few. The man before her rejected such righteousness. He was a nauseating barbarian. Tokino quickly understood that Shin Narita was a manifestation of mankind's shallowness, one of the things she wanted to overcome most.
貴様のような輩の本性を見抜けず、スクールに招き入れてしまうとはな。
死者の血と肉で飾り立てた未来とやらは、さぞかしバラ色に輝いているのだろう。それほど誇らしいのなら遠慮はいらない。自ら花びらの一枚に加わりたまえ。
Dang, what is gonna happen in this route if he's already killing her? Like, I don't think any of the routes he's ever, like, killed someone this early on. Like, it's always been, like, a very, a lot of, like, groundwork that's put in before he does anything. And, like, this, he's going straight for Tokido, which is gonna affect the school right away, and I'm wondering how that's gonna affect this route. It was hard for Tokido to believe that this man, who didn't pay any heed to Tokino's piercing rage, was a fellow human. He seemed more like a disgusting monster without any reason or emotion. Dark, profound hatred had taken root in the hole where his emotions once resided. The crescent grin on his face was so terrifying that it felt like she was looking at the scythe of the Grim Reaper as it came down on her neck.
なぜだ。
Glaring at him once again, she asked the same question. However, the meaning of this why was different. She wanted to know why he hated her.
夜見せ時のお前は裏切り者ではない。ただの敵でしかない。あの日お前がそそのかしたのか、黒船が引き入れたのか、そんなことは些細な問題だ。
I don't know, Narita, can you expand on that a little bit? I'm like really curious.
せめて最後は飾り立ててやるべきだったかもしれないが、私にとってお前はただの敵。黒船へ至るための障害。速やかに排除することにしたのだ。そう。敵は滅ぼしてしまえ。それは全くどこまでも人がましい結論だとは思わないかね。お前たちがやったよ。
なぜ。
Lastly, she asked about the cause. Why had he chosen to target her life? There was no point in trying to understand the source of his hatred. There was no escape for her. Tokido's life had most likely come to an end. However, she didn't give up. Hiding her frustration, she continued the conversation while looking for an opening that did not currently exist. An opening to reach the device near her legs. Shinri Narita was a monster fueled by rage. A man like him couldn't be allowed to exist. He had the arrogance to destroy the Academy and mankind's future over personal sentiment, which she couldn't tolerate. Tokido was aware of many reasons why someone could hate her. She'd proudly trampled over many things. Men, women, children, the elderly, the innocent, the wicked, the strong, the weak, the law, justice, society, and morality. She'd crushed all those things underfoot in her quest for a brighter future, but she didn't regret her actions one bit. If there was something she regretted, it was letting Shinri Narita, this ticking time bomb, enter the academy. It was a mistake that had to be righted, even if it cost her life.
それでは幕引きだ。夜見せ時の7年かけた舞台のクライマックス、最後の問いをするとしよう。あの日のことを覚えているか。それともとうに忘れてしまっただろうか。
7 years ago. Those words were the key. Tokido finally reached the truth and fully understood what this man was.
なぜ。
That was why she asked that question in a shivering voice. Shinri Narita's true identity was a person who simply couldn't be alive. The truth had made her eyes widen, which the man simply grinned callously in response. That was her moment. Tokido reached for the device on the ground with her left hand, drawing the man's attention to it. Upon realizing her plan, the man aimed his gaze there as well. But her left hand was just bait. All along, she had been trying to pull out something of her lab coat with her right hand, a P-2000. Before the muzzle of her gun reached the enemy, it was overtaken by the P-08, focused on her brow. Bam! The shot was far too silent. Yet another bloody act had ended.
罪には罰を、ふさわしき鉄槌を。かくして復讐は果たされ、第2幕は終わる。さらばだ、裏切りをささやいた魔女。 地獄でいずれ行く黒船を待つがいい。
Well, dang, apparently since we got Soriko's route out of the way and, we kind of learned everything about Tokido, they're just killing her off. They're like, freaking Narita's like, you're gone, you're done. I already know everything I need to know about you.
成田様、次の部隊の準備も手はず通りに進んでおります。
第3幕の開演も近い。頼んだぞ、騎士。
Well, dang, okay, Eru's route starting off quite different. 2 remained. The grand finale of a 7-year-long revenge tragedy was close at hand. After discussing our next steps with Hishia, I returned to the academy without getting spotted by anyone. I used the route I'd used many times before, but I didn't let that get to my head and carefully slipped through the tight security layers to enter the walled area. All that was left was to return to the dorm as if nothing had happened.
成田、そこで一体
Ah,
何
frick,
をしてる
when
ので
spotted.
すか?
The surprise almost stopped not just my mind but my heart as well. I was on high alert, but I just heard a voice from up close that seemed to have snuck up on me.
鳩がまめくってるような顔していますが、自分、質問しているのです。聞こえていますか、成田?
It took a lot of effort to hide my shock. She was talking the same as she always did, but that was what made it unbearable.
Takazaki, Eru.
Despite my best efforts, my voice came out a bit hoarse, but could you blame me? There was no way for her to be there at that time.
はい。自分はエルです。
Indeed, she was the one and only crown and knight of the insignia, Eru Takazaki. It was already past midnight. Students aren't allowed to wander around past 8 in the evening. I was in no position to complain, but her being there was a violation of the rules. And even if you put such a minor problem aside, she should not have been able to approach me. I'd sharpened my senses to avoid the gaze of the academy. So how had she reached me undetected? Eru Takazaki did not have much of a presence, but I was not slow enough to miss her. I could have sworn that I didn't feel anyone within a 20-meter radius. Okay, so I think she has some way of maybe hiding her presence. If you've ever seen Charlotte, there was that... the main girl in Charlotte. I'm trying to remember her name. I'll say I don't think her name was Charlotte. But you know who I'm talking about, the white hair girl, right? Like, she can hide her presence from somebody that she focuses on. It could be a case of something like that. I'd be curious. What was this girl then, a ghost? I'm sure even if it was something like that, there's probably more to it. There's always something more. I was faced with a problem far worse than the question of why she was there. Little seemed worse than getting spotted after murdering Tokino Yomose. The Academy would learn of her demise before dawn, and Eru would learn of it sooner than later. Tokino's sudden death and Shinru Narita leaving during the night. Connecting those two things was as simple as twisting the arm of a baby. It was far too early for Shinru Narita's identity to be exposed. My revenge tragedy could not come to such an abrupt end. I had to erase her. I don't think it would be that easy. You don't know what her power is. Eru's only 3 meters away and completely defenseless. Even a hamster in a cage would have been more alert. She not only didn't try to run, but she didn't even consider the possibility of an attack. I slightly concentrated my strength into my right hand. I was a mere half step away from her. Reaping her life was as simple as strangling a puppy. If I didn't do it, I would never get the chance to kill the last. That was my initial assumption, but I discarded the idea. She wasn't an enemy who impeded my path. She was entirely unrelated to it, so killing her for my own gain would have brought Shinru Narita down to the level of my targets. This was certainly hypocrisy, considering the very act of revenge brought nothing but calamity. With every target killed, more grief and grudges spread. A single death was like a ripple. Revenge never just ended with the murder of the target. No matter how hard they tried, avengers and their targets were birds of a feather. They were monsters that burned human emotion and sanity to sate their anger, and I'd already resolved to accept that.
真理は己の敵以外に振り向ける刃を持ち合わせてはならない。
That was the only means to prevent the solemn prayer of revenge from becoming more bloodshed and tragedy comparable to what had happened 7 years ago. I accepted that no matter what results and pain it would bring, if I hadn't, my revenge would have been rendered meaningless. Letting Eru approach me was my own mistake. Did she deserve to pay for it with her life? No.
いや、あまりに心地よい夜だったのでね。少しばかり散歩に出ていたのだよ。
今ちょうど雲かかって月ナッシングです。
Also, we're inside of a building. How do you see the clouds? In an attempt to sweep away my silly blunder, I pointed above. However, when I look up, I noticed that there was indeed a thick curtain of clouds.
誠に残念なことだね。
いつぞやの外へ出るルートですか。無断外出で策に見つかるときっと無残になりますよ。発見したのが自分で幸いでしたね。もちろん見返りは必要ですが。
I don't know, what did you have in mind?
安心したまえ。私は恩には愛を、悪には裁きをもって答える主義なのだから。
愛とか意味不明なものは不要です。形のある貢ぎ物を出せ。
植物的なことだね、高崎エル。愛こそが豊かな人間を作るというのに残念だ。では、飴はどうだろう?
Yeah, I don't think a piece of candy will work. This isn't Saku we're talking about.
そんなものでこの自分がまあいいでしょう。
Oh, she's actually buying it. Like last time, she took the piece of candy I gave her, threw it into her mouth, and started licking it with an emotionless expression.
レロレロレロレロレロ。
Frickin' Eru, shut up.
ところで、君こそこんなところで何をしているのだね。とうに外出時間は終わっている頃だが。
自分、夜歩き好きなので。
She revealed her hand like it meant nothing. She still looked nearly emotionless, but she wasn't exactly the expressive type, so that was her usual state. I could tell she wasn't being completely honest, but I chose not to question her any further. We all had our secrets.
では、徘徊者同士、バレないうちに寮へ戻るとしよ
う。明暗です。戻りましょう。
I had to prepare myself. Shinri Narita would soon be exposed due to that encounter. There's still only one thing I had to do. I needed to see my revenge tragedy through to the very end. It was impossible to enter the dorm through the proper entrance after curfew. The lock was one reason, but doors and windows all over the academy were being monitored. Even if we returned while avoiding running into other people, our entry would still be recorded. Thus, we returned in secret through my room's window. It was being monitored as well, but since I tinkered with it, there would be no recordings. Like I'd planned, I silently returned through the window, took a shower, and prepared to go to sleep.
う。部屋に戻らないのかね?
Hey, it's this scene again.
少々思うところがありますので、ここで夜を明かすことにしました。いえ、自分のことは気にせず、小さく愛らしい抱き枕と思っておいてください。
I don't know, usually body pillows don't talk to me. Eru Takazaki had invaded Shinri Narita's bed. I didn't know what she was thinking, but it didn't seem like she planned to leave. Something like this had happened before. That time she tried to find my weakness, but I wasn't certain what all that was about.
ここを追い出されては行く
Or what this
と
was
こ
all
ろがあ
about.
りません。部屋の鍵を忘れてきてしまったので。
That seemed like a bald-faced lie, but it was grounded in reality. The locks to our room were electronic and could only be opened by the mobile device that functioned as both a key and student ID. So long as you had the device, you would have no problems entering or exiting your room, even if it was past curfew. However, things were different if you left without permission at night. That was against the Academy's rules. All students had to keep their ID and reality interface with them at all times, but they conveyed student and location data to administration. So it wasn't something you could bring with you when you're going out without permission. It was only obvious that Eru, who'd gone out at night against regulations, had left hers behind.
どうやって寮に戻ってくるつもりだったのだね?
Without her device, she couldn't have returned to her room, but she couldn't have even walked past the gate of the dorm's entrance. Eru's expression didn't change, but...
ほう、
つまり散歩に出たのはいいが、後のことは何も考えていなかったと。
ちっけえな。何をおっしゃいますやら、さつまいもさん。いいですか？自分はクラウン1の作詞。その程度のこと、すべて計算通りに決まっているのです。
Oh yeah, so you calculated the fact that you didn't calculate it. Okay, I see.
乙女の言うことであれば、私は何の疑いもなく信用しよう。ところで、成り行きに任せた高崎エル。なぜさつまいもなのだね？
地域の名産品ですので、じゃがいもより強いのです。それよりも、ペットの話をしましょう。
Okay, we'll stop talking about potatoes and talk about this bed situation.
もちろん可憐な乙女に信頼を明け渡すのは全くやぶさかではないのだが。
では、良いですね。いえいえ、明け渡してもらって独占などとは言いません。さあ、いざ、かかってまいれ。
I tried to excuse myself by bringing up the ancient wisdom that boys and girls above the age of 7 should never sleep together, but Eru, as capricious as she was, didn't listen. While on my bed, she raised her hands like a boxer.
Come on.
You wanna fight me? Let's friggin' do it. Had she suspected me of something for sneaking out of the academy? Was that her way of trying to learn my secrets? It was possible, but I couldn't read her. She had an appearance as dignified as a porcelain doll, but her actions were far more like that of those of a whimsical cat, making her hard to read. It was rather evident that she had some ulterior motive, but her attitude made it hard to take it negatively. I couldn't even bring myself to chase her out at that point. She claimed to be the crown's tactician, so that might have been some sort of plot. Was I wrong to assume that it was very haphazard? Eru Takazaki was Saku's little knight. I knew that from the start, but I was more aware than ever that she was quite unlike most people, and I'd seen my share of oddballs.
君は謎多き乙女だね。
Yes, indeed. You are very strange. I'm really like wanting to know more about Eru because we've kind of noticed her like passingly, but I feel like she's probably one of the girls we've gotten to know the least.
エロスな野郎にとって女は永遠に謎めいた存在なのです。ところで、明日も授業がありますが、まだ寝ないのですか？寝不足で病死しても知りませんよ。
Well, it wouldn't be the first time we stayed out all night doing stuff.
同感だ。健康のためにも休むとしよう。ベッドは君に任せて、私はソファーで。
ケア。
She clung to my left arm like a koala. Well, you know, koalas are not nearly as cute as they appear to be. If you've ever seen a video of the sounds they make, it's horrifying, right? It's terrible. And koalas are mean and they poop. They're not good. You don't want a koala. Making her let go was a simple task, but strangely enough, I couldn't bring myself to do it.
自分をバカにすると地獄に落ちます。
Okay, you can stay in the bed. That's fine.
レディにこうまで挑まれ引き下がったのでは、成田真理の名誉にも関わる。いいとも、高崎エル。君の挑戦を受けて立とう。
わかればいいのです。
I felt slightly defeated, but we had no trouble falling asleep together. It was a peaceful, dreamless sleep that reminded me of the distance past.
驚く顔を初めて見た。場違いな思考が上滑りして、珍しいものを見たと感じている。
Wait, is she trying to imitate the way he talks?
赤い色だ。どこまでも激しい色。視覚が捉えた意識の色彩は燃え立つようだった。夕日のような、夕日とは違う赤。どちらもさまつ、才は何の意味も生じさせない。自分にとってなすべきことは一つ。優先されるべきはコマンドだ。それ以外は検討するにも値しない。
I mean, it's good to follow the Ten Commandments, sure.
なのに、脳裏を過ぎるのは身に蓄えたどうでもいい雑学の一つ。英語で血の色を表現するときはクリムゾンやその他の単語と違って単純にレッドを用いる。だからこれはレッドだ。赤い色。凍りついた表現のような心の上、思考はあらぬ方向へと滑ってゆく。
Okay. I'm sure I'll understand more the meaning of that later, but for now I'm a little confused. It's also curious because It's also curious because she seems to talk a little bit like Narita. I don't know, it almost felt like it was a scene that was like him narrating, but it was like her doing it instead. Interesting. Eru had left my room early in the morning before anyone else woke up. She probably intended to wait for Saku in the living room. If you ever got into the rare situation of being locked out of your room without your device, you had to ask Saku, the manager of the dorm, to lend you her master key. I walked out to the living room a bit later than usual to avoid any unnecessary questioning, and found the place as lively as ever.
成田に続いて大義まで同じ量とか、それどこのエロゲですか？大義のボンボン、時々自分のマナ父を横目で眠めつけています。もうダメです。犯される、調教される。
Eru, what the frick? It's too early in the morning for this. Stop. You're done. Freaking Soriko's face. She's just like, what did you just say?
それはないと思う。
What do you mean, doubt? You mean that's not going to happen, right?
何ですか？根拠あるんですか？あのボンボン、実は女子は趣味じゃないとか。
Oh, I don't know about Taigi. I questioned him because we found out the SSDs are guys, and he went and kissed one of them.
別にそういうわけじゃなくて、そのなんとなくかな。
It really was just like always. I had thought that yesterday's event would have changed things at least a little. The dawn of a new day felt so typical that it made me yawn. Yeah, what are they gonna do about Tokido just disappearing like that? The Crowns had a certain degree of power over how the academy was run. Theory was far from useless, but in the end it was just that, theory. Chairman Kurofune Mikado believed that knowledge without experience was worth little. Thus, the Crowns were obligated to participate in monthly administrative meetings. Of course, they even had the right to voice their opinions, which made it quite a heavy responsibility.
成田もクラウンに加わってくれればいいのに。
This is a new interesting side of the game that we have not discovered yet. We haven't like seen what the Crowns do to the full extent. Like we kind of know what they do, and we like seen them like here and there, but I didn't know about these meetings.
冗談だろ?
Smouse, who sat at Saku's side, had her head on the desk as she gulped down a yawn. She wasn't good at handling formal events, so every day before the meeting, she wandered around the dorm looking like a cat about to be forced to bathe.
でも去年ぐらいからスクールの学生も増えてきたし、やることも多いから4人だと大変だよ。
だから成田はねえよ。
That would definitely be interesting if we end up joining the Crowns in this route. I would like to see that happen, just to find out what they do. Soriko treated Narita with kid gloves due to her feelings for him, while Tamao acted harsh due to their clash on the first day. Saku sighed, realizing yet again how complicated the world was.
人間関係って厄介よね。エル、何かいい手はないかしら。この高崎エルに会心の策超あり。うるさいヤンキーと変態成田をラブラブにしたら一挙に解決。ヤンキーをツンデレキャラにクラスチェンジさせましょう。
Eru's face remained as composed as ever.
それっていいかも。
よくねえよ。俺が成田とラブラブとか考えただけでも吐き気とめまいが止まらねえから。
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time. You've already done it once.
そっかな。
Yeah, you too, Soriko. Smile got all serious and aggressive. Soriko tilted her head in wonder, and Eru side-eyed them with an emotionless face.
ソラコ、もう少しジェラってほしいところです。変態は私のだからダメなの。とか、そして修羅場展開がおすすめ。
That would be quite the plot twist if they all of a sudden remembered each of their routes.
私の頭が痛くなるから、そんなの進めないで。
Time passed by as they idly chatted amongst each other. Yeah, they're not even talking about the school, they're just talking about Narita.
そろそろ時間よ。さあ、ふざけるのはここまで。
Oh, okay, so we haven't even started yet. Good. I was like, wow, they're wasting a lot of time talking about him. Saku's expression shifted, making her look dead serious. The other three fixed their posture and waited for the meeting to begin. People whose faces they'd seen many times entered first. The chairman still hadn't arrived, but the lecturers and the main people from the research building were already in the room. They were all individuals with the authority to decide which path the academy would take next.
あれどうかしたのか、サク。時の先生、遅いわね。
Yeah, because she's dead. Dun dun dun. Saku furrowed her brow and looked around the meeting room. The front row seat reserved for Tokido Yomase, the second in command of the academy, remained empty.
時の先生、時間に遅れたことなんて一度もないのに。もうすぐ会議が始まりますよ。
As Eru looked up at the clock, a new lecturer walked in. Yeah, I bet it was this guy. It wasn't Tokido Yomase, but Sento Shishikai, who had a certain expression and seemed rather alarmed. So, we've seen in the past that he kind of has, like, this ulterior kind of evil motive that we've seen. And I think he kind of is suspicious of Narita a little bit. So, I'm curious to see how this is going to come into play. I think that Narita is actually going to have a hard time dealing with him, because he's very connected to the plant as well. Interesting, okay. I could definitely see this being fun. The early summer sky was bright and blue. It mixed with the white cumulonimbus clouds. There we go, something like that. Clouds in the distance to create a beautiful image. It had been approximately 2 weeks since Mitori Kabutoyama left the academy and Taigi Mikado joined the Etuelas. I'd honestly grown quite used to this place. I casually walked around the grounds before the first lecture of the day.
あれ、例の転校生だろ。
あんなやつと目を合わせるな。ブラウンに堂々と喧嘩売るようなやつだぞ。相手にするんじゃない。
Hey, I'm a nice guy. What do you mean? I found the voices of the students who were enjoying themselves in the garden quite pleasant. I also realized that sitting in the shade of the tree and breathing in the cool air of the area would have felt rather nice. In order to think calmly, you needed to have a degree of clarity. Like Moses miraculously parting the Red Sea, I crossed the academy grounds to arrive at the tree I'd set my eyes on. The shade of the tree was carpeted in short grass with purplish clovers peeking out. Pretending to explore, I checked the state of the academy's security. The seemingly unchanged hallways of the school were full of hurrying teachers. It was as though they felt a storm brewing. It was hard to say I had encountered no problems thus far. After all, I made a grave error in the previous night. However, that couldn't be undone, so I had no choice but to hurry to the remaining acts. A new message icon appeared on the AR of the RI I had to wear. It was a message informing all students to gather in the grand classroom. I'm guessing they're going to announce that Tokido is no longer teaching here. I'm curious if they're going to cover it up and say that she just doesn't work here anymore, or had something going on, or if they're going to say that she was killed. We'll see which direction they decide to take here. The first period lecture was cancelled, and the Academy's 200-odd HMIs gathered in the grand classroom on the second floor. It was rare for that many people to gather. This room was gigantic, but there was almost no open seats.
夜店ミストレスが事故に巻き込まれ到着が遅れている。本日中の復帰は難しいということだ。
Oh, so they're just gonna cover it up. They're not even gonna say she died. Because Mr. Shishikai said that it was a mere accident, the reaction of those present remained rather mild.
時の先生が事故。そっか。それで朝の会議は中止になったんだ。大丈夫かな。大したことないといいけど。
Yeah, sorry about that, Soriko. She's dead.
そんなのいらねえ心配だって。あの人が事故ぐらいで大事になるわけねえだろ。
You'd be surprised.
だよね。
While Soriko worried about Miss Tokido, Tamao casually reassured her despite her head being down on the desk. Soriko nodded, either understanding Tamao's intentions or agreeing that she was right. I fully agreed with Tamao myself. Tokido Yomase wasn't a woman who would have been affected by a mere accident.
カリキュラムの混乱を避けるため、本日は各自寮で自習とする。寄り道はせず、速やかに自室に戻るように。
The stern cliche words Mr. Shishikai concluded with made some in the class snicker. To those who transferred into the academy, normal student life must have seemed nostalgic.
時の先生いないからっていきなり休校ってのもなんか唐突だよな。
I mean, to be fair, she was the main teacher, right? And there's only 200 students, so it seemed like she was involved with every single one of them.
そうかな。僕はそんなに気にならないけど。
There were probably others who shared Tamao's opinion. No matter how crucial Tokido Yomase was to the academy, it didn't make sense that her running late affected the schedule of the entire curriculum. However, most of the students didn't question it too much and began preparing to return to their dorms, wearing faces that lacked a hint of seriousness.
ところでサクとエルの姿が見えないようだがどうかしたのかね。
会議終わった後、サクが急に体調崩しちゃって寮に戻ってる。エルちゃんも午前中ついてるって。さっきメールが来てたよ。
体は全ての元になる。大事にしなければならないね。
There was another who wasn't present, but I didn't have to ask the reason why he was missing. Taigi Mikado. Early that morning, he left the dorm due to some urgent business, but I hadn't seen him since. A message he sent to Soriko said he planned to skip lectures because of personal reasons. Probably has to do with Tokido dying. However, I knew full well that what his personal business was. He and the chairman most likely were dealing with the aftermath of last night's accident, as well as discussing how to best move forward. Their decisions mattered little, however. No matter what they chose, I had an advantage so long as my identity remained hidden. The shortest path between the school building and the dorm involved taking the large stairs to the inner garden, then passing through the rose garden. The reason why I chose a different path than normal was last night's event. The fitting up place for nobles, the academy was well maintained. This passage and the school building hallways were regularly cleaned by automatic cleaning devices, so even everything around my feet looked spotless. Due to its immaculate nature, it was easy to notice a girl sitting there all by her lonesome.
このような場所で何をしているのかね。高崎エル。
Why is he pronouncing her name like that? Eru.
今名前を漢字で呼びましたね。ブブブー。減点です。
Aw, dang it. Freaking, I'm already, like, pretty low on points after everything I've done to Saku. For a split second, I felt like I saw someone completely unlike Eru superimposed on her. And I'd felt that before. Shaking the delusion away, I finally noticed that my right hand had subconsciously touched the lapis lazuli on my chest. The lost would never return, I knew that well. So why was I still haunted by such absurd delusions? Pushing aside the obstructive sentiment, I recomposed the usual Shinri Narita.
もしかするとそれはかの有名な交換ポイントというやつかね。私は今何点持っているのだろう。
マイナス273.15点ですね。ほな最高と覚えてください。
Dang, we're not doing so good. We're gonna have to do something to make it up to her. We gotta get some more likability points, okay? Like frickin' minus 273. That's terrible. And I like how she even added, like, we're minus 273.15. It's not just a straight 273. Like, frickin', she's counting every little point. I pictured a river fish instantly freezing solid. I didn't know why, but her heart felt very cold in that moment, to put it mildly.
落ち込んで膝を抱えるなら自室でやる方が邪魔も入らず心の整理がしやすくないのだろうか。
へこみアピールうぜマジうぜですか。自分のうざ力はまだまだこんなものではありませんよ。
You could be a whole lot more than annoying. Okay. Eru puffed out her chest in pride, but I failed to understand why, because it wasn't much of a chest to puff. Always gotta bring something about it. The girl's chest. Always. She was as well endowed as she was rich in emotion.
脳ある鷹は爪を隠すと。
そうです。こんなのパンツ並みのチラ見せです。
そういうことならついてきたまえ、エル。
かな。正解です。0.01 点獲得。
Let's go, baby! Now we're at 270 minus 273.14. Oh, wait, that's just 1, right? Yeah. Yeah, so I think we're at minus 0.14 or something like that. Or, yeah. That's still not great. I'm going to be honest with you guys. We're still doing pretty bad. I raised an eyebrow, told her to accompany me, and turned towards the dorm. Eru clearly wondered where we were going, but she didn't question it and just followed me. Normally she would have said something to stir me up, but she seemed to actually be upset about something. I'd invited a person to follow me, which was quite a rarity, if I said so myself, and the person in question was Eru Takazaki, the source of last night's failure. Once again, I subconsciously touched my lapis lazuli. Eru always made me think of my late sister. Was that why I was concerned about her? But they were nothing alike.
最近サコの様子がおかしいです。
As we walked, Eru began half complaining to me. Apparently Sako had started to leave her alone, hung out with her less, and even got in a fight with Eru. That appeared to be why she was so sullen, but it was still unlike the Insignia's honest little knight. It was actually the first time I heard her criticize Sako in any way.
サクは今朝体調を崩したと聞いた。私から見ても最近の彼女は少し無理をしすぎだ。
今朝のことを一体どこから。さては空子が機密を漏らしやがったんですね。おしゃべり天然には内緒話通じないから困ります。
Again, she's just roasting Soriko. Talkative airhead.
情報の漏洩元は正解だが、空子もサクを心配してのことだよ。責めないでやってほしい。
まあいいでしょう。成田の言う通り、最近のサクは過労気味なのはマジです。それなのにどこかへ出て行こうとして。
I wonder what's up with her. Eru had tried to stop her, but it ended in a fight.
今朝のことかね。
今の話を聞いてなかったんですか。成田の耳はロバの耳です。
Hey, that's offensive to donkeys.
無理をして講義に出ようとした。
行き先は教えてくれませんでした。講義に行くという感じじゃありませんでしたけど。
The day's lectures were just canceled, but if that didn't happen, we could have had the standard curriculum. Toko Otonashi was a model student. Where would she force herself to go after skipping out on lectures? And why didn't she tell Eru anything? Well, we're supposed to be going back to our dorm anyways, so that's really surprising that she wouldn't do that, considering she's like so about following the rules and everything. Was it related to Tokino Yomase? Had she realized something before the academy?
サクはあの通り思い定めれば揺るがないたちだ。君にも行き先は言えないが、それでも行かねばならない場所があったのだろうね。
I mean, Saku is definitely more. She's definitely smarter than she leads on to. I think especially about the grander scheme of the academy. And I think ever since like Mitori died, I think she's had more motivation to look into the bad things going on here.
転校生のくせにサクのことを知ったような口聞きやがるとは超最悪です。
I don't know, I got to know her pretty well in what, like the second episode? You know, after we kind of grabbed, you know. Yeah. She glared at me.
やはり乙女心の謎は日本海溝よりも深いのだね。
I went to my room in the dorm, let Eru in, and invited her to take a seat.
座ってくつろいでいてくれたまえ。
座って座りまくります。
Okay. I mean, whatever you want, Eru. I don't care what order you sit. You can be seated and then sit. I don't know. Friggin' you do you. Instead of the sofa, she used a cushion on the floor. Looking down at her made me realize just how tiny she was. She was playing with the roundish stuffed toy. I guess she'd taken a liking to it since the previous time she visited.
成田にしてはセンスのいいものを持っています。
菱や、君もあった私の次女から地元では一家に一台あるトーテム的風習だと聞いて渡されたものなのだよ。
And we all know Hishia's right. I mean, just look at the Soriko ending, right? Like, we ended up with her because we followed Hishia's advice.
さすがはプロのメイドさん。目の付けどころが違います。一家に一台かは知りませんが、幸次郎くんは巣立ちをモチーフにした地元のスターなのです。
Eru's certainly an interesting girl. She's very much about local culture, but at the same time, she's very much like an otaku. Very interesting combination.
すだち
A roundish shape, short limbs. Well, it did resemble a sudachi, though I didn't know why they named it Little Kojiro. Local customs were often rather absurd. Ancient philosophers left behind a deep saying that went, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I always placed my own creed above it all else, but I didn't mind following the local rules in that specific case.
私はコーヒー党なのだが君も同じでいいかね
There was a miniature kitchen in every room in the dorm. I rarely used mine, but it was custom to boil a drink for your guest. Suddenly, Eru reached for my laptop.
PC の電源に勝手に触れないように
他人の PC の画面に指紋をつけまくるのが最高に楽しいんです。
What the frick, you little troll?
やめたまえ
Don't be doing that. Do you know how hard it is to get those fingerprints off sometimes? I quickly pulled my laptop away and placed it in the closet where she couldn't reach it. Frickin' it's like a little child. She tried to steal it back for quite a while before giving up and sitting back down on the cushion while playing with little Kojiro. She was in the exact same position as before. In fact, her movements were almost as mechanical as a factory. How bizarre. She mixed mechanical precision with a chaotically whimsical character. Eru Takazaki really was hard to gauge. She's like freaking Claptrap. Which I love Claptrap though, so I'm not complaining. I set a filter on the dripper, put some ground coffee in it, and poured the hot water from the pot over it, making a nice smell fill the room.
飲みたまえ
飲みたまいます。
I handed her a mug filled with coffee. She instantly drank the sugarless, milkless, amber-colored fluid. The next moment, she sprayed it out. Straight on my face, too. It was really hot.
まずいまずい今未来細胞が5万死んだ何ですかこれは泥水完全エミュレーションですか苦虫をイメージした夏のオリジナルドリンクですか
Gosh, I knew something like this was going to happen when they started describing the way he was making it.
なんという許しがたい言動これは私が西の土地で現地の老兵から教わった由緒正しきコーヒーそれをここまで貶められるとは
I used a tissue to wipe off the hot black liquid in her saliva.
そんな洗浄コーヒー平成日本に持ち込んで人気獲得できると思ってるとは超平素で紅茶を沸かして飲めばいいのです大体何ですこの荘園の香りのしそうなカップは
I didn't need some of your descriptions here, but
しそうなではないのだよこのマグカップは3年前あれはまだ私が
キャッカキャッカ中東の傭兵国家の戦場っぽいもの聞こえてきそうな汗臭い過去回想は断じてノーサンキューです
oh my gosh, she's literally freaking breaking the fourth wall. Please tell me the music's gonna change, though. Oh, no, it didn't. Frick. That would have been so funny if it changed right there. Eru suddenly pursed her lips, clenched her fists, and rose to her feet.
もう我慢なりませんこんなものコーヒーではありません自分が真の COFFEE というものを見せてやりましょう
今入れたコーヒーは
排水口へシュー
Well, okay then. First she had sprayed coffee at me, then she insulted it, and now she took the coffee I made for myself and poured it into the sink. How unjust. How vile. The stainless steel sink emitted a shrill metallic sound as it though joining me in protest. Then despite me not asking, she began preparing what she described as real coffee. I watched her work from behind. From what I could tell, she seemed quite skilled.
最初にコーヒー全体を湿らせそれから一気に湯を注ぐのがコツです
よく聞く話ではあるがそんなに違うのかね
他にも気をつけるべきところはたくさんありますが割愛しますそしてこちらが完成品に
Eru presented real coffee, going hot, hot, hot as she handed me the cup. Based on the heat of the cup, she must have filled it with hot water and warmed it up before pouring the coffee. Eru herself seemed to be a fan of black coffee, and so I took a sip without putting any sugar or milk in it.
まさかこの味は
何リットルちびりましたか?
Ew. What do you mean, how many liters? Gross.
濃厚な香りの中から舌を刺す苦味と酸味。味わいは匂いに負けず濃密。だが後口はさっぱりとしている。これはなかなか見事な手並み。
当然です。
My praise made Eru fold her hands and puff out her chest as though she was going to do a bridge, but instead she leaned back so far that her head actually hit the floor. Based on the sound, it must have hurt quite a bit. She couldn't lift herself back up with her abdominal muscles alone, so she sluggishly put her hands on the floor and used them to return to an upright position before puffing out her chest again, in a more reserved manner. I wasn't sure how to respond. Her actions were of a realm far beyond my understanding.
本物のコーヒーというのは透き通って濁りなくローストの香り、深い苦みと淡い酸味、それから豆の甘みがコンクリート車の中身のように混ざり合ったものなのです。
Sounds like some prison coffee to me.
それは二度と口にしたくなくなる表現ではないかね。
死ぬほど味わって飲むがよい。
She truly brewed a delicious coffee. It was easily in the top 5 I'd ever tasted. I knew that food and drink could change drastically with just a little bit of knowledge and skill, but I didn't know that there was such a master nearby. That made me notice that she was considerate of techniques and details, and had sensitive taste buds coupled with a fixation on what satisfied them. It was something I never would have expected of the Capriesque girl, who did whatever she wanted and went wherever the wind blew her. A perfect example of the fact that every human being had hidden layers to them. I also noted that sitting in front of her like that was, while silently drinking coffee together, felt quite pleasant. I savored the taste and the scent of the coffee. The bitterness covered my mouth, overwhelming me with a sense of nostalgia. I couldn't help but remember scenes that had been burned to ash. Holding my cup in my hands, I looked at Eru as she drank her coffee. It reminded me of the little girl who'd stayed by my side all those years ago. And that was despite the fact that Eru didn't resemble her in terms of face, silhouette, age, or just about anything else. It was a scene I had forgotten once over the past 7 years, an immense tragedy marked by bloodshed and flame. But it felt like I'd never reminisced about it in such a relaxed manner before. While I was lost in thought, enjoying the sweet aftertaste, Eru tried to touch my laptop again. You frick, get away. Next to the closet, I saw a chair that she had obviously placed to use as a platform. So we freaking put it up high, and she's using a chair to get to it.
他人の PC のフォルダ名をロリ画像に変更しまくるのが
Whoa,
趣味なんです
whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa, you're gonna get me in trouble.
さらにやめたまえ。
I enjoyed having her around, but her penchant for going through people's belongings was an ever-present danger. It was probably a good idea to put some distance between us.
さて、そろそろ落ち着いたことだろう。それを飲んだら自室へ戻りたまえ。本日は休校だが、各学生は部屋で自習せよとのことだ。
Yeah, I got some work to do. Get out of here.
うさぎさんは寂しいと死んでしまうと聞いたことありませんか?
Nope, never. Get out of my room.
それは迷信だ。では、サクの部屋へでも行きたまえ。
あの部屋には自爆霊が出るので無理です。TNT 火薬1トン分の破壊力です。
I mean, that's a lot of power, but sure.
自爆違いだろう。では、空子にでも相手をしてもらうというのはどうかね。彼女ならば喜んで迎えてくれるだろう。
あの部屋にはトラップが仕掛けてあります。思わずサウンドオブミュージック歌いながら国境を越えるほどの恐ろしい罠が。
I mean, I love the music from The Sound of Music. One of my favorite plays. I'd assumed she wished to avoid Saku due to the tension between them, but she suddenly claimed that even Sorko wouldn't do.
では、玉尾のところなら。
I don't know, Eru and Tamao?
あの部屋はヤンキーがいます。
A delinquent, huh?
そこだけ本当のことだな。
That is most true. Narita!
ヤン
What
キ
the heck,
ー
my
は
guy?
怖いですからね。開口を発しながら空を飛び、酸の体液を垂らしますし、夜な夜な袋をそっくりの声で泣きますし。
Wait, what? What are you even talking about right now?
私が以前に聞いたヤンキーと違うな。
Apparently, she wished to remain in my room. Still holding little Kojiro, she completely relaxed and made herself comfortable. Cats usually preferred their homes above all else, but apparently the tension in the air made her feel uncomfortable in her own room, so she decided to use mine instead. Apparently we're comparing Eru to a cat.
この部屋はテレビすらないんですか。PC 触れないというのに。漫画は
No.
ない。
How did I know he was gonna say that?
漫画というタイトルの漫画を寝そべって読んでゲラゲラ笑いたいのに。畜生、世の中腐ってやがる。バッタ。
This world is a bag of dicks. Okay. He's so random.
ないものはない。それなら他の部屋で。
寝そべって読んだらパンチダスポット大発生ですよ。仰向けかうつ伏せか選ぶ権利も与えますよ。
How about no?
必要ない、需要もない。私は放漫の生成を信じて信仰しているのだよ。君の平坦に未来はあるが、成田真理が愛すべきは少なくとも現在ではないのだ。
He says that so proudly. My sincere words traveled in one ear and out the other.
つまんねえ部屋です。クモの巣張れ。
She complained but showed no will to leave. Instead, she started kicking her legs like a child throwing a tantrum. Chasing her out seemed rather difficult. Perhaps it was best to let her stay and just observe her. It was unlikely that she would start searching through my things as long as I remained on guard. I had the option of forcing her out, but I chose not to. Sharing the same space as that whimsical cat-like girl felt strangely pleasant. It was odd to me, but I approved, and so I decided to at least move behind her and get a good look at her panties. Whoa. My guy, you just talked about the voluptuous, and then now you're doing that. Eru's freaking turning you into a pervert. A few days have passed. And we have this music again. Oath. Over that period of time, 3 major changes occurred in the academy, with the first being the announcement of Tokido Yomasei's death in an accident. Miss Tokido wasn't only an important lecturer, but also a leading figure in HMI research. The effect of her death was equal to that of an explosive act of terrorism, and there was no end to the secret feuds for her position. The lecturers were actually hit harder by her death than the students, and they expressed it both openly and covertly. It seemed it would take a while before they calmed down. The second change was the fact that right after Tokido's death, Soriko Katsuragi had collapsed.
空子はしばらく戻れないと思う。いや、重病というわけじゃない。少し、そう、落ち着くまで時間がかかりそうというだけさ。
Well, I could understand why Soriko of all people would be upset by that. Peggy knew her circumstances and told us that she was being kept in the research building's infirmary.
学友として彼女の一日も早い回復を祈っている。
僕もだ。
I was confident that he was being honest. Yeah, I don't think he has anything against Soriko. As for the third change, I think it's going to have to do with maybe Shishikai becoming the new teacher.
ドナウモンの道具で何が欲しい？
Donaomon. You mean Doraemon? Eru suddenly jumped out in front of me. I'm trying to remember. I haven't watched a ton of Doraemon. I think there was one, like, a door that... Did the door take you to, like, a different point in time? Is that what it was? I like that gadget. That's pretty cool. I'd heard Hishia speak of Donaomon. It was an immensely popular comic known to just about everyone in Japan. It was safe to call it a classic, even. About a savage robot that came from Danao Delta, and it was focused on the endeavors to create all sorts of trouble using the gadgets from his 13th dimension pouch.
って聞いて、スペアポシェとかもしもボールボックスと答えるやつは確実につまらない人間ですね。成田はどうですか？
I'd read some volumes from Hishia's collection for research purposes. I hadn't gotten a solid enough foundation to fully grasp it, but I recalled the contents itself.
私は時々間違えて出てくるスルメだな。
おお、マニアックチョイス来ました。さすが成田、変態、ド変態。
Okay.
そこまで褒めることはないのだよ。私が偉大なのは今更言うまでもないことだ。スルメはいい。実に歯ごたえのあるやつだからね。
I don't know if I've had dried squid. I've had calamari. I mean, is that close? Eru liked my answer enough to latch onto my arm. She was as flat as ever, but I very much enjoyed the softness. When did she start liking us so much? few days ago, Eru started occasionally visiting my room or coming at me like a needy cat in the class. She got in the way or annoyed me every now and then, but overall it was fun to have her. However, there were some onlookers who watched her recent actions in horror.
おい、エル、どうした？悪いもんでも食べたのか？頭に虫とか湧いてないよな。
仲良きことは美しきなのよ。
Tamao was shaking, clearly straining herself, while Saku looked on with a face that she didn't even understand before weakly shaking her head. Basically, they were surprised and stirred by her friendship. Honestly, I was surprised myself, so I didn't really have a good explanation.
僕なら着せ替えデジカメかな。メイド服を配給しよう。老若男女の区別なく、すべての人類に世界が平和になりますように。
Dang, and then there's Taigi over here talking about just wanting to give everyone a maid uniform. I don't know about guys. I don't think guys look too great in a maid uniform, but... Taigi broke the silence, shattering the ominous aura. He rarely joined in on conversations since he preferred to be an observer, so that was a surprise.
老若男女。時として博愛主義は歓迎できません。メイドおじいちゃんとか信じゃぬすぎです。
I don't know. Somebody out there has got to be into that.
ひらひらとたなびく裾ほど素晴らしいものは稀だよ。そこには男女も老いも若きもないと思う。
おじいちゃんカチューシャとかは新しい世界の芽生えとしてはいけるかもしれません。
どういう話を噛み合わせんだよ、お前。
You know, Tamao, I'm with you on this one. I don't agree with everything you have to say, but I definitely agree with this. What did Taigi Mikado intend? I refuse to believe that he'd merely joined in on our idle chatter. Kurofune and Taiki should have already realized the meaning behind Tokido Yomasei's death. They should have realized that someone who was after them or the academy was already nearby. So...
ところで、話は変わるんだが、噂を聞いたよ。
We're back to turning away from each other again. I knew it. The exchange was a seg for this. Taigi's smile vanished as I felt him peer at me with a gaze that seemed to coil around me. He was observing my reaction. It seemed he had accepted Tokido Yomasei's death, so what was his plan? The proper course of action was to leak information on the spot or the accident, which was something no student could have known and observed how I reacted. In that case, my biggest worry was Eru Takazaki. If Taigi talked about the circumstances surrounding Tokido Yomasei's death, she would likely begin to suspect Shinri Narita. This was a result of my own failure, and I was ready to accept it. However, the wait for what Taigi said next still made me tense enough that sweat formed on my back.
近いうちに野外実証試験が行われそうだ。
Heck yeah. I mean, I've been waiting for another moment where we're, like, actually testing out our powers again. He said something completely out of left field.
どういうこと？そんな話聞いてないわよ。
野外実証試験初めて聞くな。
そっか、成田はまだ知らなかったわね。
Yes, please explain.
俺たちクラウンが学外に出るんだよ。県の対策本部からの要請を受けて。
Oh, okay, so this is probably similar to what happened at the start of the game then, huh?
HMI を学園外で活動させるとはよく行政の許可が下りるものだね。
仕方ありません。やるのはスライダーへの対応ですから。
Sliders. I'd heard about them in a recent lecture. They were essentially HMIs who had gone berserk. Since they were an abnormality and a poison amidst standard society, stronger beings of the same order had to deal with them. Beings like the Crowns or other Etoile grade HMIs.
ということは、外で新しく HMI が発見されたが、運悪く適正にかけ、スライダー化していた。ということかな。
所詮噂だから、僕にも詳しくはわからない。
大義が噂というのなら、多分当たってるんでしょうね。
お褒めに預かり光栄だけど、明日のことは明日になってみなければわからないよ。ただ、これも噂だが、今回はクラウンだけではなく、プルミエール級以上の HMI すべてが対象になるらしい。
So I believe like premier grade, that's like what, like 20% of the students? Something like that?
大げさですね。 エドワールとプルミエール両方合わせれば50人近いですよ。それを野外実証試験とは街に戦車を乗り込ませるようなものです。
そんなこと今まで一度もなかったのに。どういうこと？スライダーはこれまでだって私たちクラウンで問題なく処理してきたわ。
Could be just to give everyone experience, but yeah, that is kind of curious.
それなのに一言の相談もなく学生の動員を進めていくなんて。
何もかもまだ噂だよ。
そうね、ごめんなさい。あなたに当たっても仕方ない。でも一体どうして急にそんな大げさなことをして、万一何かあったらどうするつもりなのよ。
The frustrated expression on Saku's face was a rare sight. She was tense because the so-called anti-slider practical examinations were actually battles. There was no telling what could happen in them. The slider would desperately resist, and adding inexperienced neophytes to the battle did nothing but increase the chances of unforeseen consequences. Tokido Yomase always left it to the crowds because she understood that the well-trained few were more powerful than the unwashed masses. Had this changed because Tokido had died, or was there some other reason?
今回は相手をロストしてしまったらしい。
それも噂かね。ロストということは見失ったと。
問題のスライダーはスクールの追跡を振り切り、当局の捜査の網にもかかっていない。だから人数を動員せざるを得ないらしい。
Oh, okay. So we just need numbers, essentially.
探すところから始めるんですか？
I'm sure nothing could go wrong with this.
それなら納得できなくはないけど、クラウンのメンバーは創作向きの HMI とは言えないし。
結局どれもこれも噂で確かな話じゃないんだろ。実際そうなったらまた言ってくれ。
Tamao was just like, wake me up when something interesting happens. I'm not gonna go on your little search party, huh? Tamao shook her hand and tried to shook her hand. Whose hand are you shaking? What do you mean, shook her hand? And tried to leave the classroom looking extremely bored. I think it's supposed to be her head.
タマオ、どこへ行くの？もうすぐ講義の開始よ。
やぼよ。適当に言い訳しといてくれよな。
Hey, what the frig? If I have to go to class, you have to go to class, okay? How is that fair?
タマオ、ちょっと待ちなさい。
Yeah, Saku, you tell her. Tamao dashed away before Saku stopped her. She tried to make it look casual, but her steps were hurried.
行ってしまったね。
Thank you, Taigi. I had no idea that she just left. That's blowing my mind right now.
身勝手ヤンキーの面目躍如です。
I wouldn't say it's selfish, Eru. You haven't seen her route, okay? Tamao seemed almost impatient there. She tried to look normal, but her face looked as sharp as an unsheathed blade. What had made her rush away like that? Had all the incidents of the past few days taken a toll on her?
もうタマオ、一体どういうつもりなの？
Well, I'll say one thing, it's probably changed her plans. After spending a moment in thought, Saku gave in and did something on her device. I assumed that she opened up the info layer to send a message to Tamao or check her coordinates. So long as you remained on the Academy's grounds, your position was being monitored and displayed on an open info layer. I mean, that's a little bit of an invasion of privacy, I'll say that. Most students use this feature daily to find each other, but Saku was adverse to it because it felt like an invasion of privacy. She avoided using it unless the situation called for it.
あれ？教室？まさかあの子。
Tamao's position as displayed on the info layer was at this very classroom. The reason was obvious. She had left her device inside the bag on her desk.
タマオ、端末を忘れていったんですか？持ってないと連絡をつけるのは無理ですね。最先端テクノロジーの思わぬ落とし穴。
Yeah, I mean, there's not much you can do unless you're gonna, like, really make it an invasion of privacy, you know? Like, you could put it in your head or something.
忘れていったか。
Yeah, I think forgot is the right word. She didn't forget. Either that or she left it behind in order to keep anyone from tracking her. I think that's very likely.
後で叱っておかないと。
成田、玉緒の様子がいつもと違っているように見えなかったかい？
I mean, she's been acting like this for a while now, so yes and no. Taigi spoke softly so that only I heard his words.
大義にはそう見えたのかね。
気のせいかもしれない。何にせよ、注意はしておいた方がいい。最近、よからぬことが多いからね。
I don't know, bad for you maybe.
よからぬことというと、この学園内に変質者が出るとでも？もし変態が出たら怖いですね。あ、変態いた。
Hey, why'd you look at me when you said that? Hey. Eru overheard us and said that, faking surprise while looking at me. I puffed out my chest in pride as a response.
心配は無用だとも。たとえ変態にカテゴライズされるのだとしても、私は一向に構わず、自らの信じるところをなすだろう。
I shall simply follow my beliefs and do what I must. Yeah, that's something a creep would say.
少しは構え。
ともかく、これ以上良くないことが起こらないよう祈るばかりだね。
Oh yeah, nothing ever happens at this school. This is just rainbows and sunshine. After saying that, he put on his usual gentle smile and ended the conversation. Yeah, you go ahead and do that, Taigi. How suspicious. Seemed like Tokido Yomase was far more irreplaceable than I expected. However, despite that fact, the academy wasn't as shaken by her death as I had anticipated. The hair-raising sensation on my neck was a reflex developed from having experienced many life-threatening events. I recognized it as a warning. It was a vague premonition that something was going to happen soon. However, now that the giant crack had formed in the academy's defenses, it was the perfect opportunity for me to enact my revenge.
ところで成田、イカの匂いについてですけど。
Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for you to ask. I've been wanting to talk about this all day, Eru. Let's talk about the smell of squid, right?
イカ。スルメの件かね。スルメのスメルとはこれいかに。
But make it squick.
うわ、寒い。そんなネタにもなってないネタを自慢げに。この男、最悪、超最悪です。
I like our personality, our personalities changed a little bit to match Eru. We've started adding letters to things just to piss her off. After joining the exchange, Eru sniffed around and reached for my device.
やめたまえ。
Yeah, stop.
なんです ?JM、かっこおじいちゃんメイドのエロ写真を壁紙にしてるからですか？
Hey, I thought this school was a judgment-free zone, okay? Mind your own business.
残念ながら私の好みは女体だ。そう、海よりも深く女体を愛しているのだよ。女体は素晴らしい。そうは思わないかね。
エル、あまり成田に近づかないように。日常でもくれぐれも気をつけて。
Oh, just wait, Sako. Your route's coming up next, and I'm gonna make you love me. More than you already do. As she said that, Saku's eyes were nothing, if not serious.
という冤罪だろう。たとえ野獣になるとしても、成田真理の思考はもっと豊満なる生成に捧げているというのに。
Eru's body was akin to a well-paved road. Just ripping into her again, which made it far from ideal. With her, I could only enjoy the wabi-sabi of picturing how she would develop.
万一の時にはためらわずに武器を使うこと。いいわね。
Don't be afraid to use a what weapon?
自分、慎重なタイプなので、良い変態と悪い変態くらいは見分けられます。ちなみに成田は最高に悪い変態。
I take insult to that. I think we're one of the good perverts, okay? Obviously, we do some questionable things, but there's worse out there.
最高という評価はいかなるものであれ、実に気持ちのいいものだね。
And he takes it as a compliment. Maybe you are the worst.
ダメでしょ、二人とも。
And Saku's just like, oh my gosh, you're giving me a headache. Saku sighed and returned to her seat. It's probably the best course of action, honestly. Her side profile looks somewhat sullen, and clearly not because of our nonsensical conversation. Mitori had left, Soriko wasn't present, and Tamao had been wandering off on her own as of late. though according to Eru, Saku also disappeared quite often. It felt like a huge crack had appeared in the peaceful times I'd experienced at the academy, and that crack formed as a direct result of Shinri Narita's actions. I had no regrets. No matter what Tamao or anyone else did, Shinri Narita would do what he had to do. You know what, Shishika? You're on my bad list now. I don't know why, but I'm choosing to make you on that list right now. Just with Taigi. It's just you and Taigi. I don't like either of you, because I feel like you got bad intentions. But I feel like Taigi actually has good intentions. I feel like we're going to see a different side of him later in the game. But for now, he's on my bad list, because he always does that weird back-to-back thing with me, which is kind of gay. The lecture continued without issue. Also, there was that thing where he kissed that girl who's actually a guy. That was kind of gay, too. And, you know, we're all about women, so, you know, the voluptuous breast. Normally, Saku sat to my right, but Eru had stolen her spot that day. Saku herself was to Eru's right. Eru usually sat one row ahead of us with Soriko and Tamao, but they were both absent, which may have prompted the move. Though, that didn't explain why she'd taken Saku's seat. Was she planning something?
時にエル、私に何か要件があるのかね。
別にありませんが、なぜにそんな質問を？
ないなら構わない。
Tokino Yomase's death had been ruled an accident in public. However, Saku and Eru were crowned, so they took a part in managing the academy. There was no guarantee that they didn't know the actual truth. From appearances alone, I guess that Eru had yet to connect Tokino's death to Shinri Narita.
ところで成田、左脇毛の本数を教えてください。
No.
沿って0本にしておこう。
Okay. As usual, Eru was an incomprehensible oddball. Yeah, pretty much. She's like every Redditor. Or 4chaner. Or any of those type of websites. Though clouded by a mist of anxiety, the day went by peacefully. Evening closed in as the sky switched from blue to orange, from orange to purple, and from purple to black. On most days, the dorm's living room was lively at that hour. Some prepared dinner while others just watched the large TV while engaging in idle chatter. That day, however, the only ones killing time here were Eru and I. Neither Tamao nor Saku had returned as of yet.
成田、コーヒーです。いらなければ自分が飲みます。
I don't know, I think you have enough energy. Do you really need more coffee?
慎んでいただくとしよう。君の入れてくれるコーヒーは実に味わい深い。
But yes, apparently her coffee is very good. I accepted the cup she so considerately prepared for me. But isn't it like evening? Do you really want to drink coffee like before you go to bed?
ちょうどいい機会なので尋ねるのだが、昼間スライダー対策の話題が出た。
You know, I could go for a couple sliders right now. A good burger always sounds good.
はい。大義のボンボンが根も葉もない噂を聞きかじってきてましたね。
噂が本当なら、編入してから初の野外実証試験だ。私はエトワールだがクラウンではないので、詳しい説明は受けていないが、スライダー症の処理とはどうするのかね。
We cook them up and eat them. Sliders were HMIs, and as such, our legal system wasn't designed to deal with them. Even if they were found guilty of a crime, standard methods couldn't be used to capture or punish an HMI.
いいところに気がつきました。
Wait, what do you mean? You don't know? Her voice sounded as emotionless as ever, but she spoke like a lecturer.
詳しくは内緒です。知りたければクラウンのメンバーになって野外実証試験に超出撃すれば OK。
Hey, they said the other ones could join too, you know, like the, what was it, 20 or 25%? We technically fit in that crowd.
釣れないことだ。
と言っても別に命を奪ったりはしないです。それだけは策の名誉のために言っておきます。
That meant Saku was the only one who dealt with sliders, presumably with her halo.
今はそれで納得しておこう。ところで今日の食事はどうしたものだろうね。
策と一応ついでに玉尾が帰ってきてからにします。
Wow, you're better than I. I don't wait for nobody. Like, if I'm hungry, I'm gonna eat some food. She replied without hesitation. She didn't even seem to consider that they could have returned in the dead of night. I had the option of going to the cafeteria, but I decided to follow the little knight's example and wait for the ones she served.
では一刻も早くサクが帰ってきてくれることを祈らねばならないな。
食堂行ってもいいですよ。
一人の食事は味気ないものではないかね。
じゃあおとなしく待っていやがれです。
I was used to solitude, but I couldn't help but feel that the living room had become quite desolate. Neither Tamao nor Saku returned before curfew. Losing my chance to have dinner, I returned to my room. Dang, my guy, just go eat something anyways. As I lost myself in thought, I heard a knock on my door.
鍵はかかっていないから入りたまえ。
I wonder who it is. What? Whoa, I didn't expect you. The short silhouette that entered belonged to the exact person I had expected.
成田、
Yes? Saku and Tamao saw and returned. Eru and I were the only ones at the
こ
dorm.
んな夜更けに何か用かね。
I wonder where Taigi is.
そうです。
She was wearing her usual poker face, making her extremely hard to read.
実はサクを助けてほしいのです。
助ける？それもサクを。それは随分とおかしなことを言う。
自分おかしなことを言っているつもりはありません。
Well, hold up, what's going on with her?
私に助力を願うという行為、それ自体が君らしくないと思う。どうかね。サクを救うのは高崎エルが自ら選び取った役だ。私の知っているエルという少女には、それを一人ででも成し遂げようとする意志があった。
Eru's sense of loyalty could not have been more real. Shinri Narita believed her will, which she'd revealed every now and then, had not wavered in the least. And so, I didn't understand why Saku's absence had driven her into a corner. If Saku was trying to achieve something, the most Eru Takazaki thing to do was to stand at her side.
合理的に判断しました。優先するべきは結果ですから。状況は自分一人の手には余ります。空子は療養中ですし、タモも最近は勝手に動いてやがります。
I mean, I wouldn't start faulting Eru for being humble. She's just saying, hey, everyone's kind of away, and I'm not sure if I can do it on my own.
大義を頼れば理事長に筒抜けになるかもしれない。それならば偉大なる成田様に屈服する方がいいというわけだね。
Shut up, more like Narita the lame.
最後のだけかなり全く違います。この変態、脳みそ超洗浄して出直してください。一番マシな人選が成田だったのは残念ながら事実ですが。
承知した。詳しい話を聞かせてもらおう。
Eru looked back at me and nodded before speaking up.
サクはミトリが学籍辞退してからこっちずっとそれについて調べています。
Well, I hate to tell you, we already have figured that out.
成果はないようでサクは追い詰められてます。エルの話もまともに聞きません。取り付く島もない。
Honestly, though, I'd be down if we break into the plant with Saku and, like, learn even more information. That would be kind of cool. I feel like that probably wouldn't happen in this route, but...
あんなサク、エルは見ていられないのです。だから成田にサクを助けてやってほしいのです。
Very interesting that we're supposed to be helping Saku in Eru's route. Eru bent toward me, and her unusual display of sincerity made me feel perplexed.
待ちたまえ。ミトリの学籍自体について調べているというのもよくわからないが、それがどう追い詰められることになるのかね。
Well, there's some powerful forces trying to hide the fact that you know, she was kind of killed. Eru backed away a bit, calmed down, and looked up at me.
成田はミトリの学籍離脱をどう思います？
玉尾は仕方のないことだと言っていなかったかな。私としても同じ意見だ。個人の事情はそれぞれだ。軽々に踏み込んで良いものではない。
わかりました。ではそういうことにしておきましょう。サクは納得していませんでした。何の連絡もなく 突然いなくなるのは不自然だと、そう考えていました。
Yeah, it was definitely out of character for her. I'll say that.
ミトリと親しかったサクがそう判断したのなら、彼女なりの根拠はあるのだろうね。
In actuality, Mitori Kabutoyama had already officially succumbed to illness. Hishi had looked into it, meaning this info was reliable. Something must have happened after she left the academy. Saku Otonashi's suspicions were probably on the mark. The academy's dark underbelly had something to do with Mitori's apparent disappearance and death. And that meant what Saku was doing was equivalent to stepping on a dragon's tail. She was in more danger than Eru even realized.
ここ数日はいよいよ危なっかしいのです。こんな時間なのに帰ってきていませんし。
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting going through Mitori's route. I don't know. Maybe we can save her in Saku's route, or maybe we'll save her in Mitori's route, or maybe the true end. I'm not entirely sure. I'm kind of hoping the true end like goes back and like kind of fixes some stuff. Like before she dies, we save her, and maybe save some of the other people too, and then find out all the mysteries. I'm hoping it like kind of like changes the common route a little bit.
位置をモニターしているレイヤーにアクセスして居場所を確かめてみては。
ID 端末を寮に置いていっています。
Yeah, it seems like everyone's doing that these days.
なるほど。本気ということか。それは確かに危なっかしい。エルの心配もよくわかる。
If she left her device behind, then Saku truly did suspect the Academy. We had to watch our words. The Academy was under surveillance from every possible angle. If this conversation somehow leaked, not only would I be in danger, but Saku and Eru would be as well. With that in mind...
話は分かった。では、しばらくおとなしくしてもらおう。いや、抵抗しても構わないのだが、それはそれで趣がある。
What are you about to do?
一体何を。
I placed my hands on her sides and picked her up like a cat before throwing her onto my bed.
このマイクロフェチ小さいものキラー平坦狩人。
What? It's a weird way of calling him a lolicon.
エルの悪魔にもそろそろ慣れてきた。これはこれで味がある。
I think he's trying to use this as a guise to cover up their conversation.
マジ変態。二次元スキーに加えていじめられスキー。変態変態変態。超変態がここにいます。誰か来て。
Oh my
おとな
gosh.
しく静かにしたまえ。どこからモニターされているかわからないのだから。インシグニアの策が学園へ不利益な行動をとっているかもしれないと知られるのは、君にとっても望ましくないだろう。
Eru stopped struggling as though the setting on her had been changed.
そんなこと言って取引だぜうへへへへ。策のことを黙っていて欲しければとか言いながら恥ずかしいことをするつもりですね。薄くて高い本みたいに。
Her words were harsh, but she whispered them into my ear, not letting anyone else but me hear them.
昼も言ったと思うが、私は放漫を愛する敬虔な美の信仰者なのだよ。
ピチピチヤングな弾ける若さに興味はないと。
Wow, she's really trying to sell herself.
しかり。
真偽を確かめるのは後回しにしますが、
Please don't.
それよりも策の件です。
先に言っておこう。サクがやっていることは、スクールにとって不利益なことかもしれない。
Why had Eru Takazaki chosen Shinri Narita? The reason for that had already been stated. But besides that, there was the fact that Saku's actions were in opposition to the academy, so she couldn't turn to any of the other étoiles or the teachers. Eru had stopped struggling and remained within my powerful embrace. The way she had thrown her hands out made her look like a human-shaped vessel. Humans were unexpectedly easy to break. I knew a number of people whose minds were shattered by extreme fear, tragedy, cruelty, or other factors. However, Eru Takazaki was unlike any of them. The eyes staring at me didn't contain much emotion, but they weren't quite emotionless either. Eru had a giant void within her. I didn't know why, but I felt like I hadn't seen the real her thus far.
高崎エル、君はそれでも構わないのかね。
何がですか？
Her voice and stare were the same as ever. I could feel joy, anger, grief, and pleasure in them, but they were as dull as the taste of sand. If that was all she was, I could have deemed her an enemy. I'd have assumed that she was a trap meant to lead me to death, sent to me on someone's order. However, she begged me to save Saku, and there was enough will behind her words for me to believe her. It made it hard for me to reject her. Had I simply underestimated her? Had the fact that my mind equated her with my sister created a fatal weakness? The hesitation vanished in but a moment.
サクが自分で選んで踏み込んだのなら、今さら誰かの言葉で道を曲げるとは思えない。ならばサクを助けるとは、このスクールを敵に回すかもしれないということだ。
怖いですか？嫌ですか？時の先生に歯向かってたくせに、いざとなると引き下がりますか？
私はそれでも一向に構わない。成田真理にとってのこの学園はただの仮の宿だ。必要ならためらいなく鉄槌を振り下ろし、炎にくべられる。まして一人の男として乙女に助けを請われて答えないのでは生きている価値もない。戦う理由としては十分すぎる。それでもいいのかね。
The academy was merely a temporary home in Shinri Narita's eyes, but to the 200-odd other HMIs, it was a paradise they'd reached after a truly long journey. And that had to be the case for Eru Takazaki as well. I didn't know what her past was like, but I imagined it was rather harsh. That was why I had to ask her that question. I needed to know that she wouldn't regret that decision. Regardless of what she was, I had to confirm that she was okay with trampling over her fellow HMI's paradise.
自分はサクを守ります。それ以外のものは必要ありません。
Her words sounded as mechanical as a drill.
エルがここにいるのはサクのおかげです。そしてエルがここにいる理由はサクのためです。サクを助けてください。成田真理。自分にあるのはそれだけです。引き換えに自分がどんなことでもします。
Dang, I mean, I can respect her loyalty though. I don't have very many friends that would do something like that.
君の誠はどこまでも示準だな。
I believe that she was being completely honest, and even if everything else was fake, I knew that the words she just spoken were not. In that case, there was only one path for Shinri Narita to take.
これを取引というのならとても釣り合いは取れない。
こんな、どうして？
She gazed up at me with a somewhat angry emotion in her eyes.
言わなかったかね。乙女に助けを請われて答えないのでは男として生きている価値もないと。
はあ、意味わからないんですが。
助けが必要ならば取引など持ち出さず一言言いたまえ。プリーズと。他に何が必要というのだね。
本当にわけわからない人です。成田真理。
これが私のスタイルだ。生きるべき時も死ぬべき時も私は己のあり方を貫くだろう。
That is pretty true. He's pretty much tried to betray every girl he's tried to get with so far, for his core belief of wanting to get revenge. Whether for better or for worse. I mean, eventually he kind of has given up his quest, or like he always says, I'm gonna put it aside, you know? But I guess he kind of does follow his beliefs, or at least at first.
プリーズ、サクを助けてください。自分では無理です。
Dang, it's really weird seeing Eru like being so humble to us.
承知した。成田真理の名誉にかけて約束しよう。私は高崎エルの頼みに応え、サクを救う。
That's very interesting, his choice of saying, I swear on Shinri Narita's name. You know, that's not his actual name. Doing so also potentially brought me closer to the Academy's secrets, and thereby Kurofune's throat. Shinri Narita planned to kill two birds with one stone.
サクを助けてくれるのなら何でもいいですけど。
Well, this is kind of nice, because I feel like if it helps Saku in some way, Eru doesn't care if we get revenge on Kurofune. So this would actually be pretty nice, you know, for us. We don't have to have that scenario where with Tamao, you know, no, don't kill people, even though you're from a family of killers. Or with Soriko, where it's like, we're killing her dad, you know? That's kind of a no-no.
任せたまえ。
So this might actually be kind of nice.
ところで、どうして英語なんですか？プリーズって。超中二者ですか？
どうしても何も、私は海外育ちなのだよ。
It was only natural that my English vocabulary was vast. Okay, I'm hoping something big will happen here soon, because we started off this route like huge, like that was like awesome. Like we just straight up like killed Tokido, like that was crazy plot twist. He's not done that before. But so far it's been going kind of slow. We're getting a slow build up to something big happening, and I'm like, I want to get to it, okay? I'm a little impatient. I'm like, I know there's something great around the corner. But let's keep reading. After sending Eru away, I felt hungry and went to get some chapati from the kitchen. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Yeah, I knew it was like Indian. I don't know how to pronounce it. It was a type of Indian wheat bread that was cooked somewhat like crepes. Oh, okay. I mean, I grew up with Indian friends, but like, I'm not claiming to know all the food they had. People normally ate them with curry, but they also worked with vegetable or other toppings. That night, I took a highly American combination of thick-cut ham and tomatoes and put it in between the chapati to have a light dinner before my bath. I also leafed through a book for a little bit before finding a good stopping point, closing it and leaving it on the table. The front cover had the words, "The Lowly Ronin, Kijiro, Kasumi." It was a pre-Meiji period story that I'd occasionally read because of a certain man's influence. The fact that a man like him had such a major impact on me actually irked me, to be honest. I wonder if, this role model for him, right, after his parents died, I wonder if he's that other character we haven't seen yet, because I do have one that it says has a voice, but we haven't heard it yet. Still, I can relate to the Buddhist-like perception of the evanescence of life that came with the samurai code, so I enjoyed it. It was all about not fearing change. Change was unavoidable in this world. No, change was the world, so there was no real reason to be afraid of it.
サクはまだ戻っていないようだね。
It was almost time for lights out, yet Saku was nowhere to be found. Kage walked in through the main entrance. It didn't seem like he had just returned, though. If he had, the dorm's management systems would have informed me with an icon in my vision. He returned to his room without even noticing me. Had he taken care of some business at the
こ
front?
ちらもなしか。
I checked and confirmed that Saku's shoes weren't around the front entrance. Then I went to her room on the second floor just in case, but I didn't feel anyone's presence through her door. Saku was a crown and the insignia at that. It was unusual for her to act alone, but...
これが玉緒なら心配もしないというのに。我らが筆頭殿は他人に気遣いをさせる名人だな。
I don't know, I'm kind of suspicious of Taigi coming in like that. Obviously, Taigi knows his way around the school systems and all that. He kind of wandered around for a bit and then eventually, becoming the 7th Etoile. So I feel like he could get around a system that, would detect whether he came in or not. I'm just noticing little things that they're mentioning. And he just came in, but Saku's not here. And we know that Taigi controls the SSDs, right? So... that's a little suspicious to me. I feel like he has something to do with why she's been kind of AWOL lately. And it sounds like she hasn't really been here all day.
我らの筆頭とは我ながら皮肉の効いた言い回しだ。
Shinri Narita was the greatest threat to the academy, so it was odd for me to worry about Saku, the guardian of its peace and order. The proud, beautiful Saku Otonashi in her divine breast. Why did I have to read that? In all honesty, Shinri Narita liked her exactly the way she was.
私はただなすべきをなすだけだ。
I wonder if they're kind of low-key hinting that Saku is the main love interest of this game. She is the canon one. However, since I made a promise with Eru, I suddenly had a lot more on my plate. For now, I had to rest and restore my energy. I turned off the lights in my room and sank deep into thought amidst the silence. For a moment, it felt like my closed, reddish eyelids showed me a picture of Eru. Suddenly, I heard a knock on the door.
ただいまーん。
Hey, I'm trying to sleep. Get the frick out of here. I changed into my uniform to make the welcome proper and opened the door to see Eru, who was supposedly returned to her room. Then again, her room was right in front of mine, so it was only 3 meters away. Not showing any hint of remorse, she just grinned while standing in the hallway. I couldn't just let her stay there, so I went in and let her in.
まだ何か用かね。眠ろうかと思っていたのだが。
Yeah, you're interrupting my sleeping. Okay, I'm trying to go help Saku, but I need some sleep. It happened again. Until she knocked, I didn't even sense her presence. At that point, I couldn't shake it off as just a trick of imagination or an accident. Was it one of her Halo's functions? Trying to hide my surprise, I waited for her response. I'm wondering if they're gonna do like some like kind of crazy gimmick where like she's been like viewing certain events that have been going on, like points in the story where we didn't realize she was there, but she is.
自分一方的な救済でほえほえバーンで万歳万歳というのは気に入りません。やはり対等に取引にしたいです。
Alright, what are you willing to trade? I can guarantee you she's gonna try to trade something that I don't want her to trade, but she's gonna do it anyways because she's gonna try to appeal to Narita.
成田に不要でも高崎エルには必要ということです。成田は自分のことしか考えないわがままクソ野郎ですね。
For the most part, yeah, you're not wrong.
筋は通っている。
See, even he agrees. I managed to express my conviction, so she wanted me to let her express hers too. Eru looked at me like a wild cat with new prey in sight and walked up to me.
口止めが不要というならば体で払いましょう。成田は女体は好きだと言ってましたしね。
I already knew this was coming up. I've known this for a long time. This was the kind of character Eru is. She wants to prove herself. She knows she's a little bit smaller and a little less developed than some of the other girls, and she wants to prove that she's just as good. That's just her character. So I knew this moment was coming. I saw it coming from a million miles away.
また妄言を。私はもう眠るので、今夜は帰りたまえ。
And Narita's actually turning her down. I quickly turned around and went to bed. My silence conveyed my opinion of her shenanigans. Eru watched me undress with a keen eye, but that wasn't enough to stop Shin and Narita from getting naked. She's just watching him undress. After all, I knew Eru would be overwhelmed by the divinity of my perfect body and back down.
クックック。恐るべきビッチのエナジードレインに耐えられるかな。
What are you calling yourself? What? Contrary to my expectations, she ripped off all of her clothes before leaping a few times like a jumping spider at unexpectedly fast speeds and crawling atop my bed.
やめたまえ。
ふーふー。
Please stop. Just stop while you're not ahead. Of course, my words did nothing. Her eyes were beastly, shining with a lust for blood. Her cheeks were flushed, and her lips were curved into a lascivious smile. Lascivious? No, that wasn't the right word. Not for someone as flat as her. What had gotten into me? Huh? She forced her lips on mine. I briefly let the mood take me, and she took advantage of this opening.
やめたまえ。相手が望まぬものを与えて取引など。
Yeah, I know. It's funny because Narita's usually like so into like a maiden wanting, you know, to get with him, but he's like, Eru, I don't know, she's a little flat. I don't know about that one, Chief.
嫌も嫌よも好きのうちというのです。おとなしくしろ。自分に任せていればすぐに最高に喜ばせてあげますとも。にゃははは。
Why does she laugh like that?
何を。
An unexpected sensation ravaged my brain. The geyser like eruption of pleasure cut off my words short. What was that? A sensation I never felt before gave me goosebumps. It was so hard to breathe that I felt like my throat was full. Felt like my throat was full of solid air.
ほら、気持ちよさそうじゃないですか。
Hold on, what in the world is going on here? A mere kiss, a mere embrace, and yet it pulled at my heartstrings, so...
何そんなバカなエル
I was quite certain that I wasn't the kind of beast who liked girls of Eru's body type, but then what was this fiery urge? It felt like I'd become a foolish moth attracted to flames. The sensation welling from somewhere deep inside me made my spine shiver in anticipation for the coming pleasure. The sense of warmth and comfort she exuded was unbearable.
そんなんも何も現実を見やがれこのむつりでもないか普段から痴漢行為に及んでいましたね成田は
Please don't make those noises. You're making me uncomfortable. Every single time her lips touched mine, my entire body shook with pleasure I'd never felt before.
まさしく予想だにしなかった成田真理最大の危機
She's taking advantage of us.
なんとか反撃の手を正気を保たねば
さあ成田真理はエル様のシリアナ奴隷ですと言いなさいそうすれば楽にしてあげましょう
Please don't say that. I had entirely focused on keeping myself together, and so there were no resources I could dedicate to resisting. I hadn't felt such danger since that bastard Kurofune sent me to the abyss of death 7 years ago.
はいかんなんとかしなければ
Dang, he's equating this feeling to when his family was slaughtered 7 years ago. Like, I don't feel like this quite compares to that.
我慢なんてしなくていいんですよ体に毒ですよ何もかも諦めて楽になったらどうです
Who knew Eru of all the people in this game would be the most kinky? Another kiss, but I knew I had to avoid her temptation. I didn't hate it or anything, but I had to keep myself in check. However, as Eru toyed around with me, my reactions grew stronger and stronger. I wanted to embrace her. My reason dimmed and the inhuman, instinctual part of me told me that I was getting close to losing my mind. Where had she been hiding those techniques that could easily corrupt any man? Surely not within that tiny body of hers. More importantly, the perverse fear that occasionally washed over me seemed to be indescribable pleasure that ravaged my very soul. Had I been hiding a latent, corrupt desire to stain my hands with forbidden pleasures? No, my faith in the voluptuous couldn't be sullied by desire for that flat...
落ち着くのだ成田真理心を水面のように
I desperately tried to steady my uneven breaths. For the moment, I had to buy time and calm down. This felt entirely unnatural. Was it the work of Eru Takazaki's halo? But wait, what kind of power granted the ability to stimulate the pleasure it sent? My thought vanished before it finished. Beneath those lips akin to a small flower, inside the walls of her mouth akin to boiled mud, her tongue curled and undulated? Undulated?
これで取引成立です大丈夫安心してくださいエルはお口チャック女となって成田の恥ずかしい秘密は黙っておくと誓いましょう
Hold up, what are you talking about?
それでエルが納得するのなら
It's so weird to see Narita, like, so caught off guard.
納得するのです
Eru's strong indeed. There's a reason why she's one of the Atolas. That was probably her way of making things even. Human relations, hearts, and minds were truly complex things. Once the arousal faded away, my body cooled down. I fixed my uniform.
それでは戻って寝ます
ああ私も眠るとしよう
While I was overcome with a heavy sense of defeat, Eru looked as emotionless as ever. She gave me a bow, turned around, and left.
悔しい
She's such a hard person to read. I lied down in bed again, covered myself, and closed my eyes. The fatigue that reached my very bones made sleep wash over me at an impressive speed. Hope we don't get attacked tonight. But gosh, like, was she using part of her halo? I'm a little confused. The rumors Tagi had mentioned became reality early next morning. During first period, we were informed that the day's lectures would be replaced by a practical field examination. It was to be a major event involving all the Academy's premier and Etoile grade HMIs, which was about 50 or so elites.
名前を読み上げた者は集合してくれ。所定の位置で待機して次の番を待つ。
You know what? Shut up. I don't like you. Split into groups of 5 or 6, we moved to the city, and once there, we would head out on our mission. Both the amount of people mobilized in a practical examination and Okushima were completely unheard of. The town was full of civilians, of course, and we were forbidden from doing anything to cause harm, but that was still worth noting.
大義は私の次のグループなのかね。
そういうことのようだね。
Taigi waited for his turn, looking as cavalier as ever. Saku, myself, Eru, Taigi, Tamao, the Etolas were split into different groups. Eru had already left as part of the group before the last one. Albeit late, Saku and Tamao had actually returned to the dorm last night. Fulfilling my promise to Eru to save Saku would have proved far easier if we were all in the same group.
それはエルの言葉をそのまま受け取ったとして。
There were still some things I didn't understand, but compared to the weight of that promise, they were nothing. To Shinri Narita, promises were divine in nature. Though the exchange was quite questionable, I'd accepted it, so I had to fulfill my end of the bargain. At that point, what mattered wasn't the circumstances or sincerity, but how I would go about it. Protecting Saku 24/7 was difficult. Also, if I got too close to her, I risked involving her in my own problems, which would have had the opposite effect. The most straightforward course of action was solving Saku's problems, even though that wasn't exactly easy. It was best to start by finding out what Saku was actually doing. I didn't know if she would actually answer, but I considered asking her directly where there were no prying eyes. However, as the insignia of the crown, she had her hands full with this major practical examination. I had to talk to her when she was less busy. We had to split up into groups for the practical examination, but there was no rule that specified that we act as one in town. It's actually a competition that used the name practical examination as a front, and the winners were the ones who fulfilled the condition. That meant we would most likely all act on our own, which I truly appreciated. I could walk outside by myself and with the Academy's approval.
いい気になってるのよ。
Shut up! Who are you? You want to say that to my face? As I stood apart from the other students, thinking about what to do next, I felt some animosity coming from me toward me from the row of students waiting for their vans.
君は確か
Yeah, I don't even know your name. Like, shut up. Who? I felt like I'd experienced something similar before. I think it was when I don't know, something to do with Tamao.
すまないが君は誰だろう。私は基本的に男の名前は覚えない主義でね。
Yeah, I remember we met the 2 guys, right? And then we met the one chick that he remembers her name.
なんだと。貴様。
And we almost got into a fight. I think, was it Tamao or Saku that stopped us?
何やら怒らせてしまったらしいな。
It's probably Saku now that I think about it.
そういうことならば一つ質問をしよう。君は男の名前を覚えて楽しいかね？
楽しい楽しくないの問題だと。
麗しき乙女の名前をチェックするならいざ知らず、男の名前を記憶したところで私は全くもって愉快ではない。まさに履き古した下着を洗いもせず身につけるような気分だ。もちろん隣にいる乙女のことはよく覚えている。水倉女子だ。
はい。
Yep, he remembers her name perfectly.
鍵石よしおだ。
His expression made me think he was about to bite me. No, it felt more like he was holding back an intense urge to strangle me.
聞き覚えがあるような気もする。ところで訂正しておきたいのだが、いい気になっているとはお門違いも甚だしい。私にとってはこれが至って平常運転なのだよ。いい気になる必要などどこにもない。
貴様、つくづく舐めた口を。
I mean, to be fair, this school literally has a system that's built to say that some of you are better than others. I mean, you have the premiers, which I'm assuming he is, and then you have the étoiles. So there's literally like a hierarchy of who is better than who. So he quite literally does look down on you because you are, in the school's definition, inferior to him. I mean, that's not him saying that, that's just how the school is designed. People as short-tempered as him existed all over the world, and I was a man who didn't let it bother him. In fact, compared to true, lethal, murderous gazes that foretold instant death, the bloodlust here didn't go beyond a street fight. It was too cute to even consider a threat.
貴様の存在がこのスクールの秩序を乱している。貴様はガンだ。このままいつまでもそんなでかい面をしていられると思うなよ。
Frickin' fight him then. I would love to see you try.
思うなと言われても困 自前のこれ以外に持ち合わせがないのでね。
I understood at last. He saw the Academy's model as absolute and therefore thought Shinru Narita, a man who didn't fulfill his role as an Etola, an intolerable, disturbing element. He couldn't permit the existence of a person who refused to compromise their convictions. How sad.
貴様みたいな奴がいるから
He attempted to continue his verbal abuse but was stopped by a fellow student. The other man lightly elbowed him.
君の人格は褒められたものではなさそうだが、友人の選択は幾分真っ当であるらしい。
お前がエトワールの器じゃないってことを必ず証明してやるからな。
He glared at me with venomous eyes, then returned to his waiting spot clearly dissatisfied. They misspelled venomous. It was readily apparent that he truly wished to assault me, but as one who believed in the rules of the Academy and the value system of nobility, Shinru Narita was an Etola, and as such had to be respected. Even if he objected to my classification, this was a truth he couldn't fight. As enraged as he was, he still remained calm enough to avoid betraying his convictions.
いつもながら注目の的のようだね。
黙っていても人目を引いてしまうとは、これほどに秀でた自分のあり方に我ながら困ってしまう。
Ah, sheer brilliance. Yeah, something like that.
今日の実証試験は開校以来の規模だ。それだけにさっきの彼のようにやる気になっている者も大勢いる。
So he wants to prove himself, so he's gonna talk big instead of, showing me something big.
自分がノーブルにふさわしい人間であるとアピールしようというのかね。
I don't know. I don't think it's very noble to be like, oh, I don't think you're a good guy, and I don't respect you as an Etola.
どちらかといえば狙いは成田、君だろ。
You know, Taigi, I agree with you. I think you're actually saying some good stuff right now.
私を
Watashi?
予想外という顔だね。なるほど。その鈍さは確かに君らしい。強者の傲慢だ。エトワールと他のランクの学生が同じ実証試験で成果を競うような機会はめったにない。空に輝くエトワールと地にいるものを比較しても意味はないからね。
It's very elitist talk coming from you, Taigi.
弱者は強者を羨み、妬む。そうだろ。スクールで作たちクラウンの力を疑う者はいないが、君は新参で、その上笑えるほどに反抗的だ。
I don't know. I'm wondering if maybe some of the other students see his, his defiance or his rebelliousness as like weakness. Essentially, they're saying, "Hey, all these other ones are noble. They're in the Etolas and they're noble because they respect the rules, but you don't. That makes you worse than them."
はっきりと手の届かない星なら、人は黙って仰ぎ見る。偶像とは、汚れなく輝いていてしかるべきだ。しかし、君はその輝きに正面から泥をなすりつける。どしがたい輩だ。
Yeah, I think Taigi's kind of saying what I'm saying too. Like, they don't respect him because he doesn't follow the rules like everybody else. So they think that makes him worse than the rest of the crowns.
引きずり下ろしてしまわなければ己の自尊心が傷つくというわけか。いよいよもってせんない話だ。
人間とはままならないものだよ。すべてを理屈だけで片付けられるなら、この世界はもっと生きやすい場所だろう。
I don't know. I feel like that'd be kind of a boring place. I like that there's a little bit of difference in opinion and things like that. Makes it more interesting. But yeah, it does make it a little bit less pleasant in some ways.
その意見については同意しよう。
It's like, I don't really want to live in a world where everyone thinks the same way. Because I want people to like expand my view of things. I like when I'm challenged a little bit on my position on something. Because in some ways that can help me improve myself, right? It'd be very boring if everyone thought the same way. Shinru Narita had sworn an oath of revenge due to the hatred and rage in his heart. It was truly an act of foolish base. It was the act of a truly foolish base human. In a way, I was no different from them. Suddenly, we were told to gather. It was time for my group to enter our van.
では一足先に行ってくる。
See you later, loser.
幸運を、成田真理。
Just kidding. I'm so mean to Taigi and Shishikai. I don't know why. Like, I should probably be a little bit nicer. Sento Shishikai saw off the vans as they left the academy. That was the first time they'd sent out so many HMIs since the academy's establishment. And he...
さて、サイの目はどう出るか
Oh gosh, I forgot you're like this major villain. What do you have planned here? Cracked a grin. Dun dun dun. I'm curious what his plans are. He's obviously up to no good. The goal of this practical exam was to discover and secure the HMI candidate the Academy had lost. The target was likely a slider, making it more of a battle than an exam. The Academy conducted all sorts of tests countrywide to discover HMIs. That was particularly true around Ogoshima. Since their schools were closer to the Academy, the investigations were particularly meticulous. During a test 2 months ago, they determined that 3 students in a nearby city of Azumi were possible HMIs. Unfortunately, one of the 3 had killed the other 2 and fled. Her name was Tai Kusashiba, and she was our target. 2 main streets cut through the heart of Ogoshima. One was a short road that led southward from the station towards the famous Miyama mountain range, and it was surrounded by hotels, department stores, and other larger establishments. The other street, Ejima Road, was one of the city's arteries, and it led all the way outside the prefecture. The Furumachi River also ran almost parallel to it. It flowed as though to surround the station, and apparently when the weather was right, tourists crossed it by ferry. The van arrived at a corner of a park right next to Furumachi River. Even in the city center, you could find public establishments such as an assembly hall. During the summer festivals, they held cultural heritage dance rituals that attracted many observers. I assumed it was quite a sight, though I don't think I would ever see it. I walked out of the van. The caravan of cars must have been a curious sight, since the children that were playing on the slide in the park stopped what they were doing, stood up and looked in our direction. The few pigeons that had gathered around them flew off in a surprise. Their wings rapidly flapped as they shed a few white, snow-like feathers. Look, it's little Eru. In the midst of the cinematic scene, one of the children approached me, only for me to realize it was Eru. One of the children approached me. Dang. Just freaking roasting Eru right now. Who had been playing with them. Apparently she decided to wait for me. Oh, so she was playing with the kids. That's great. Probably just thought she was one of them.
Eru です。
Yep, that's my name. Remembering the prior night's events made me lose my words for a second. It was rare for me to lose control of my actions to that extent. I had to calm down and stabilize my breathing.
なぜそんな大げさな登場を
That was my biggest question. It made no sense.
登場シーン見開きバーンは摂理なのです。初登場の重要さがわからないとは。
I mean, I guess? I don't think that's a law, at least not one that I know of.
これだからキャラの濃い主役属性に生まれついたやつは嫌になりますね。主人公補正の約束されていない脇役には口に出せない苦労が伴うのです。
君の遠大な哲学にはそれなりの理解を示すとしよう。ところで君は随分と先行していたはずだが。
単独行動じゃなきゃダメとは言われていませんので、成田のお出かけに同行しようと思って待っていました。
You know, Eru, that sounds like an awesome plan. Let's freaking do it.
正直自分一人の方が身軽で行動しやすいのだがね。
足手まといだと？
言葉を選んでありていに言えば邪魔だ。
そういうわけにうまいらないんですよ。へひひひ。24時間エルビ、成田は策を救うをリアルタイム視聴する必要があるからです。
Is that your real name, Erubi?
美は何だ？
ビデオです。別に録画するわけではありませんが、エルビデオってエロビデオみたいでいい感じですよね。
Oh, it's for something completely perverted. I honestly thought, like, for a second she was gonna say that she's Eru v Britannia. That would have been dope.
それに成田はよそから来たエトラン勢。自分は地元に詳しいジモッピー。飼ってればいろいろとお得がありますよ。例えば夜のサービスとか。
やめたまえ。
Yes, thank you, Narita. I'm so glad he, like, shares my sentiments.
昨日あれほど一緒に行くと約束してくれたのに裏切るのなら仕方ありません。成田の恥ずかしい声をネットにアップしてウハウハ楽しみますよ。
Did anybody else read that first line a little bit wrong? Like, is that what it's intended to be, or is it intended to be like, hey, you were supposed to come with me, you know, during this operation, right? I'm a little confused.
そんな約束をした覚えはこれっぽっちもないが、私の人格が危ぶまれかねない恐ろしいことはやめてもらおう。
Yeah, Narita's supposed to be like this cool, kind of perverted type.
そうでしょう、そうでしょうとも。
要するに何としても私と行動を共にしようというわけなのだね。
へっへっへ、話が早いことで。
A grin graced her emotionless face. I could have easily shook her, but there was no telling what that a walking enigma would do in that case.
君の意見を尊重しよう。ただ何が起こるかはわからない。覚悟の上でなら好きにしたまえ。
このエルがそんな状況判断すらできないクソどまぬけカスボケアホっ子だと？
Hey, nobody said anything like that. That would be a little bit mean, don't you think? She seemed like a ticking time bomb, and I couldn't read her at all. But there was an indomitable spirit within her that you couldn't see in her eyes. In a way, she resembled the one she served as a knight, Saku. Perhaps she would be less of an unpredictable element if I had her at my side and observed her every move. It honestly felt like looking away from her was far more dangerous. I'd made my decision already, it seemed.
ついてきたまえ。
イエーイイエーイ、ペロッと片付けてやりましょう。
Fine, Eru, you can come along. I didn't think I'd have to babysit today, but I guess I do.
なんですか？自分を熱い眼差しで見つめて、やはり成田はリトルハンターなのですか？
I know some people out there who are, but that's not me. It's not
全く違
Narita.
うとあえて断言させてもらおう。私は誇りにかけてフォーマンへの愛を貫くだろう。
And I love how he has to keep reaffirming this fact.
うげ、やっぱり変態だ。へ、た、い。
Was it necessary for her to like slide across the screen like that? It was pretty great though. As we continued that conversation, I walked with the small silhouette lagging behind me by half a step. My hand suddenly reached for the lapis lazuli on my chest. For a moment I felt an impossible emotion, as if something that had been lost had returned, and vanished soon after. I really want to know what that connection is, like they need to explain it better. The academy students scattered around the town to search for the target. Tai Kusashiba, trying to figure out how to pronounce her name. Had vanished a week ago. Far too much time had passed. A professional would have left the area a long time ago. However, Taiku Shoshiba was but a normal student, or at least until she wasn't. A person who had become a slider was, unfortunately, no longer a mere student. That was the very reason for the practical examination. However, based on the rumors Taigi had mentioned, it had taken quite a lot of work to make the mobilization a reality. Normally, HMIs that had become sliders were dealt with far earlier. They were observed by the academy, and if something wasn't right with them, Saku and the other crowns were dispatched to cooperate with the local police and the countermeasures office. They dealt with the issue as soon as possible, while the casualties were still low. This was an exception because it was a worst-case scenario. The target had not only killed the other candidates, but also escaped the academy's observation. Kurofune Mikudo had powerful connections and authority. However, due to that, he also had many enemies. The fact that he had a hand in something as questionable as HMI research didn't help his case either. The matter of whose fault this was, who had to take care of it, and who would gain or lose political power led to backroom dealings, which consumed a lot of time. Even after they decided to mobilize the Academy's HMIs, many discussions were held about the release of 50 HMIs into the town under the guise of a practical field examination, which only made sense. 50 HMIs were 50 bombs. I mean, you have the HMIs who could cause chaos, right? Like, they have powers, and they maybe don't have 100% control of them. I mean, these are the ones that probably have more control than some of the other ones in the academy, but still, yeah, 50 of them is a little bit questionable of a choice. And then you have the other thing is this guy, or excuse me, this girl, I guess, has already killed 2 HMIs. So there's a possibility she could kill some of these other students. So very questionable decision, honestly. Just sounds like a recipe for disaster, because they're not really like paying too close attention to them. Like Eru's already gone off with Narita. Like they're not even caring where you go. But you know, this is good training, right? People living in the normal world didn't want such creatures among them. If Tokido Yomase was alive, she might have handled the situation more appropriately. But unfortunately, she would never return. Kind of interesting that he says unfortunately. Eru, local as she was, led me around the town. With the station at the focal point, we walked on the side of the river, following a path to the remains of an old citadel, which was another local attraction. We passed by many ordinary citizens who were doing much the same, and none of them were aware that 50 walking bombs mixed among them. We then traveled south to the park next to the Furomachi River. We drew on a half circle around the station, checking a large area before returning to where we started. Beyond the river, there was a wall of red brick and multi-purpose high-rise buildings.
なんです。またしてもエルの顔をじろじろ見て、目から高速で体液を打ち出す練習ですか？それともこの艶やかな美貌に惚れましたか？
Okay, that's a little weird, but I don't think it's either of those things. Small as she was, Eru tended to fall behind me due to the difference in our steps, so I had to adjust to act the part of a gentleman. Eru tended to spice her talks up with various gestures, which made her even slower at times. If she ever fell too far behind, she half ran to get in front of me and looked back. I felt that was an action characteristic of young children or small animals. It was pleasant to watch, but then I realized that I was once again subconsciously seeing my sister in her. My weak sister rarely ever got to go outside. Even so, when I and my childhood friends went to play, she snuck out and joined us. I still remembered how my childhood friend used to pull my sister by the hand. However, those moments have become naught but more than bitter illusions.
いくつか確認しておこう。最近の策の不在だが、どこで何をしているのか君に心当たりはあるかね?
I changed the subject to hide my sentiment.
いいえ、全くこれっぽっちも。
追いかけたりは?
したことはないです。
どうしてかね?
そう命令されたので。
I failed to understand the logic, or perhaps it was more apt to say a strange feeling of discomfort poked me like thorns. Eru hadn't tried to follow Saku and then lost her. She simply hadn't even attempted to follow her. Eru called herself Saku's knight. Odd as she was, there was no doubt in the sincerity behind that term. If Shinri Narita's perception of Eru Takazaki's true nature was correct, she would have followed Saku out of worry, even if that meant disobeying her order. The gap between the impression she'd given off and the actions she'd taken were hard for me to close. I would have understood if all that was a trick to get close to me, but that seemed impossible. If that was true, she would have never provided such a half-baked excuse. After all, Eru wasn't lying at all. She said that she didn't do it because she was ordered to. Had she come to seek my support because the order was that important to her? Eru Takazaki's standards were awfully convoluted. They didn't seem to have a proper foundation, so they weren't exactly complex, but that did not help me understand it any better.
君は何者だろう?
おかしなことを聞きますね。自分は高崎エルです。エトワールにしてクラウンのメンバー。エルの役目は策を守ることです。
That was all true, but not right. It felt like I was trying to complete a puzzle without the most important pieces at hand. Rather frustrating, really.
いいでしょう。特別に教えましょう。エルはアンドロイドなのでした。ドッキャーン。
Well, it would have been a lot more shocking if you told me that you were an iPhone, right?
それはまた奇妙な比喩だね。
Like always, she had an unreadable expressionless face.
ところで、今更なんですが成田。策を手助けしているのが本人にバレると、自分めっちゃ怒られてしまいます。
I mean, probably, but she seems to be getting herself into a situation that's going to be pretty difficult, and she's probably going to appreciate it later.
なるべく策に気づかれぬようにということかね。 留意しておこう。
おい、ステルスな感じでお願いします。
Alright. We'll be like Sly the Fox. Eru Takazaki was verbose, but how much of what she said came from the heart? Her plea for me to save Saku seemed honest. I had no proof, but it was what I wanted to believe. However, her overall actions simply felt far too mysterious. Was this actually a trap? No, it was too roundabout for that, and even if it was, as far as I knew, only one person could have given Eru that order. But then, what was her goal? What if she wished to discover Shinri Narita's true identity and stop me no matter the cost? No, Saku wasn't the type to take such indirect measures. If she truly wished to impede my path, she would have appeared before me herself. Much like her actions during the botched choreography, she would stake her noble title as the insignia and put herself in harm's way. We'd explored the northern side of the station, so it was time for the south. We passed the bus terminal. In front of the station, I saw several boards with striking helical pictures on them. They were utterly incomprehensible to me.
もしあれはアミュレット的な何かかね。
成田、意外に目が節穴ですか。あれは東の海の大渦をモチーフにした絵柄の看板。奥島は一応観光地なので細かい努力を行っているのです。
なんであれ、努力というものは美しいね。
Compared to the northern side of the station, this end had many major department stores and the like, making it a lot more lively.
山際に大きな建物がありますよね。あれは踊り記念会館。最上階からロープウェイが山頂まで出ています。登ってみますか？
目立つ場所は他の者に任せておけばいいだろう。
We were dealing with an amateur. It was hard to imagine that she decided to survive in the wild.
ですよね。ピザは町のど真ん中にありますが、あれで時々は野犬とかマムシとかスズメバチとか国産三大怪獣が全部出没しますから、隠れたりしたら手間が省けちゃうかもしれません。
Yeah, none of those sound very pleasant, so let's check there.
嫌な手間の省け方ではあるな。
There were kimono-clad women standing on what looked like an outdoor stage that was slightly a higher elevation than the rest of the riverside, and they were performing some sort of magic ritual as a group.
エル、あれはウィッチサバト的なものかね。
何を斜め下のことを言いますか、このデカチチレンジャーは。あれは奥島名物の民族舞踊、天川踊りです。
That's a new one. Titty Ranger.
お盆の頃に観光の目玉として全世界の注目を浴びるやつの貴重な練習風景なのです。感謝して拝みなさい。さもなくば目がつぶれます。自分が潰すので。
あれが世に聞く奥島の民族的リチュアルか。
I never expected to see the real thing, so I did appreciate the splendid sight, even if it was mere
奥
practice.
島の人間は一度はあの踊りスターになることを夢見て練習に励むというか、エルも踊れるのかね。
I would love to see Eru do this dance.
きたー。その超ありがちなツッコミ。何ですか？日本人は全員空手家で芸者ですか？藤山で天ぷら食ってウハウハだと言いますか？
I mean, no, I wouldn't assume that, but I would hope you're having a good time, you know? I would love to see Mount Fuji. I think that would be fun. Maybe eat some, shrimp tempura. That'd be nice. That'd be a good time. I mean, I'm not going to assume everyone does that in Japan, but I would hope that everyone would get to experience that at least once.
すると踊れないのかね。
いえ、踊れますけど。しかし、自分的にはむしろサクに踊らせたい。
Whoa, Eru. I didn't know you liked Saku in that way. Okay.
みちみちアニメ柄の踊りポスターがあったでしょ。今は練習なので普通の着物ですが、本番ではあのポスターみたいな格好にフォームチェンジするのです。
Well, I hate to tell you, I've not seen the posters.
サクにあの格好をさせて踊らせる。いいと思いませんか？
私は君という女性を見くびっていたようだ。素晴らしい。着物を内から食い破らんばかりに自己主張する神の父を押さえつけながら民族リチュアルの踊りを天に捧げる。
Freaking, as soon as Narita's brain starts going, he's like, "Oh, Eru, I totally agree with you. This is a great idea, right?" If only you used your brain for things that weren't so perverted, that would be wonderful. You could get so much done.
想像するだに感動で意識が遠のく。
そうでしょう、そうでしょう。今度ぜひやりましょう。
Well, now they're united in making sure that Saku does this dance.
いつでもいいたまえ。私は一命を落として君の願いに力を貸すだろう。
You're so dumb. So dumb. Alright, what shall we do with you? For the main street, we walked through the street we had visited the last time we traveled together. In preparation for the summer, there were posters and banners here and there, making it feel like a festival was close.
前にも来ましたが、この辺りのアーケード、一時真剣に錆びでかけていたのが、最近は多少は持ち直しました。ほら、ここが映画館の入っているビルです。サブカルアニメ作ってる会社の。
I believe we have heard about that before.
こういう会社もあるせいで、地元全体がサブカルチャーで町おこしとかやってるわけです。イベント自体はそこそこ根付いてきましたし、この映画館できるまでは駅近くの映像施設は全滅でしたから、マイナーサブカル系とかアニメしか放映されないのがあれですが、奥島マニア的には便利でナイスです。
Okushi Maniacs, huh? Sounds like otakus to me.
奥島で一番賑やかな場所なのに、昼間は閑散としてますよね。地方都市の悲しさきたー。
Because all the weeps come out at night.
こっちの小道は前にも行きましたね。お好み焼き屋さんのある通りです。
Actually, excuse me, the weebs don't come out at night. The weebs just don't come out at all because they're too busy reading manga or watching anime or, you know, worshipping their Hatsune Miku idol figure. Okay, they don't come out. The real ones don't come out. The fans are kind of like, oh yeah, I like anime. Attack on Titan is cool. You know, My Hero Academia. I love Deku, right?
その隣のアイスクリーム屋さんも
They'll come out.
すごいですが美味しいので、今度また連れて行ってあげましょう。成田のおごりで。
And you'll pay, of course. Thanks. You're a real friend. At least she was upfront. She didn't make us wonder if she was going to pay for her own. She just said, yeah, you're going to be paying, by the way. You know, I can respect it. I can. We wandered the town for about 2 hours, but didn't find anything notable. Eventually, we took a break at the long park to the southwest of the station in order to discuss our next steps.
他の学生たちと違って、私たちは実証試験で躍起になって成果を上げるつもりはないのだから、気楽だがね。
みんな、どうしてだかやる気パッチしなんですよね。自分、そういう気分はよくわかりません。
スクールの外で活動する機会はめったにないのだろう。
Yeah, pretty much. I think everyone's excited to get out of the academy. You know, you're out in the world again, and you want to prove that you're better than everyone else.
初舞台で浮かれる新米役者か、いや、いっそお出かけ気分の子供というべきか。
Yeah, I would say that's more of Eru, since she was literally playing on the playground with the other kids, and then we thought she was one when she approached us.
成田もなかなか辛辣です。全然ポエミーじゃないですが。
Hey, you're not very poetic either. You say some weird off-the-wall things. It was still before noon, which made it a little early for students to be in town. That was why we, clad in our flashy uniforms, stood out in the empty area.
他の連中、スライダーを見つけるだけでいいのに、欲をかきやがったら笑えない話になっちゃうかもですね。HMI 同士で戦闘とか、ちょっとした市街戦じゃないですか。
Yeah, that's another possibility, is the HMI is like trying to fight each other for the glory.
動員された50人の力はどの程度なのかね。
ピンキリです。どんなハローを持っているのかは原則非公開ですから、詳しくはわかりません。プルミエール以上の HMI ばかりなので、実戦レベルなのは確かでしょうけど。
Yeah, I wouldn't say like they're like the best of the best, but yeah, they can hold their own.
機能もいろいろで超知覚系とかもいるはずです。痕跡がなくても後を追っていくようなやつとか。
That sounded most troublesome. Someone like that could have exposed Shin and Narita in an instant.
始末はサクと玉緒の力ばかり任せておけば安全なのに、誰がこんなバカな話考えたんですかね。
Yeah, it is curious that they're involving so many people when there's probably somebody that has a halo that could easily get this job done.
黒船の意図ではないだろう。
黒船理事長ですか。
Definitely sounds like more like something Shishikai would have planned, because it's definitely not something that Tokido would have done.
これだけ目立ってスクールの存在を印象づけるのは、あの男にとって決して本意ではあるまいと思うだけだよ。
Yeah, there's no way Kurofune would be down for this. It's kind of interesting that he even allowed it to happen.
ふむふむ。
Searching for hidden prey with a large group was reasonable, but personally I would have taken the quality over quantity approach. HMIs or not, a group of untrained individuals was trouble in the making. I didn't believe that Kurofune approved of the risk, and so I assumed that his political opponents had used the disappearance of the slider to force his hand. Or perhaps Kurofune didn't care about the potential risk, and he released HMIs in the hopes that they would lead to growth that could never happen within the walls of the academy. I believe that one more than I do somebody having leverage over Kurofune. He doesn't seem like the type of person who would let somebody do that to him.
今日の試験でサクはどの区画の担当だったかね。
古町の向こうだと思います。まさかサクに告げ口するつもりですか。そんなことをしたら成田の秘密も暴露されて、僕はシリアナ奴隷ですと言ったことがバレますよ。
Eru, no, please stop.
やめたまえ。加えて言った覚えはない。エル、君は何かと注文が多いな。
I'm so glad he just tells her to stop too. Like, it's not just me this time.
そう、人呼んで注文の多いロリコニアン。ちなみに自分が食べる方で成田が食べられる方です。
Okay, a little weird, but
まさか注文が多いから約束は保護だとか。
約束とは神聖なものだ。交わした以上最後まで果たすとも。それにまあ厄介事ほどやる気になるというものだよ。
やはり成田はマゾッホなのですね。謎の生命体マゾッホ。縛られたり殴られたり大好き。
what kind of word is that? Masochistia?
やめたまえ。謎の通り名はつけないでもらいたい。救うにせよ、手助けするにせよ、サクが何をしているのかわからなければ手の打ちようがない。
言ってることは正論ですが、自分超困ります。サクめっちゃ怒るに決まってるので。
I forget why that's my problem.
君たちを巻き込みたくないと考えているからだろう。彼女らしいと私は思う。
成田のくせにまた知った風な口。超最悪な気分です。
I don't know. I would say Narita got to know her a little too well. Maybe not emotionally, but
そろ
physically.
そろだな。
何がですか。
I kept moving east from the park, and Eru followed closely, not commenting on my behavior. I found the person I'd been waiting for near a children's playground steam locomotive. I looked at the time on my device, and it was exactly 1 in the afternoon. As always, she was right on time, down to the last second.
お待たせしました、ご主人様。
Yes, let's go, baby! Hishia!
おや、いつぞやのメイドさんですか。
It's Best Girl!
菱谷森と申します。高崎エル様、お久しぶりです。
Hishia gave her a perfect English greeting.
ご主人様、どうやら新たな世界に目覚められたようですが、それは人としてどうなのであるかと、菱谷、突っ込んでみましょう。
Yeah, apparently we've become a lolicon. I'm not sure if I approve of this.
エルのことであれば、彼女はあくまでも。
Suddenly, yesterday's unexpected event passed through my mind. It was so out of nowhere that I had not fully processed it.
これは珍しい。傲眼不遜、唯我独尊、身勝手マンのご主人様が落ち込んでおられるとは、菱谷、びっくりです。
I know, apparently Eru is like our kryptonite. It's so weird.
よほどナイーブハートに突き刺さる出来事でもあったのでしょう。シャイな過剰装飾系はこれだから困ります。
さりげなくふとした興味から伺いますが、高崎様はご主人様の堕落具合に何か心当たりがおありでしょうか。ロリロリンの邪道にはまってしまったとか。
Loli Lolian. What? Now we're just not making sense anymore.
高崎エルです。エルルンとお呼びください。
No.
承知いたしました、エルルン。
Hey, Hishia, stop. I didn't order you to call her that.
マジ呼ばれると我ながらドン引きです。
I didn't understand why they could communicate so smoothly. I had similar thoughts during their first meeting, but apparently they were on the same wavelength. They talked like sisters on good terms, but somehow I felt like I was looking at two demons guarding the gates of hell. Was I just tired?
わーい。
He's just freaking doing his breathing technique. He's like, I need to calm down. After harmonizing my body and mind using the breathing methods of Geb, I instantly recovered.
それはともかくとしてだ。
何やら露骨に話を変えられた気がしますが、まあいいでしょう。それはともかく、なんと便利なことが。
ところで成田、このメイドさんは何ですか？趣味ですか？フェチですか？カチューシャフェチよりはチョーカーフェチの方が高尚だと思います。
Eru, let me stop you right there. Why not both? Okay, like those are both nice things. Why not have both, right? And thigh highs, those are also great. I think every man can agree that thigh high socks are sublime. Okay? We can all appreciate the wonderful things in life.
フェチズムは私には縁遠いことなのだよ。ちなみにヒシアには頼み事をしているのだ。
Yes, we need the help of Best Girl, because Best Girl has never led us astray. She's always been there and always got the job done.
さようです、エルルン。
Stop calling her
昨夜の
that.
今日ですので、スーパーメイドとしても十分とは言えませんが。
頼み事というと、
最近の策の行動についてだ。
There was a reason why I had Hishia, an outsider, investigate Saku, a student of the academy. Saku often left her device behind, meaning that whatever she was doing, she couldn't afford to be tracked by the academy. That in turn meant she was likely operating off campus. I myself had been regularly walking the academy's grounds at night, so if she was in that area, I would have spotted her. There's a slim possibility that the person in black I'd encountered was actually her, but their body type, specifically their breasts, which were nowhere near as voluptuous as Saku's, made me believe that wasn't the case. Do you really gotta do Tamal like that? Like, you really gotta hurt her feelings? Like, can you believe that? Thus, if Saku wasn't inside, she was outside. Needless to say, the entrances to the academy were very well guarded, even if I had trouble coming and going undetected. Or even I had trouble coming and going undetected. However, Saku was an Etoile grade HMI. Perhaps she had something up her sleeve that allowed her to pass security and leave unnoticed. And assuming she did leave, what was she doing outside? Investigating Mitori's case, perhaps? Saku was the insignia of the crowns. As such, she'd left the academy alongside Tokido Yomase quite often. Maybe she discovered a secret related to the academy's actions.
ヒシア、結論から申します。最近、おとなし様らしい人物が市内で見かけられております。
どういうことですか？
Eru instantly reacted to Hishia's words without a hint of surprise on her face.
ご主人様。
構わない。報告をしてくれ。
はい。おとなし様の足取りを完全に終えたわけではありません。分かった範囲では、おとなし様が探っておられたのはこれ。2065事件についてです。
Alright, keep going. What is that? Hishia gave me a report that seemed to summarize all the facts she'd uncovered. I looked through it at a speed that made it look like I was simply playing with the
この
paper.
事件、地元ではバラバラ人食い事件と言われ、一世風靡したとか。
どうしてサクがそんなものを？
Surprisingly, Eru's expression changed. Apparently, as a local, she was familiar with the incident. Gosh, that sounds like something straight out of Chaos Child. Incident 206 was a bizarre murder that occurred in Okushima several years ago. The victim was a student from a private school to the north. The reason it was bizarre was because the body was desecrated. Apparently, there was even rumors of bite marks appearing on the body, which gave the killer the sensational name Messy
地
Cannibal.
元では有名な事件なのかね。
K 県は田舎ですから、人口が少ないので、田舎いじめはあっても、強盗やら人死にの類はめったに起きません。それが突然、猟奇殺人だったので。
At the time, people assumed it was the work of some deviant, and it attracted lots of attention due to its violent nature. The culprit didn't even attempt to hide the evidence. There were lots of lost items at the scene, so people assumed that the culprit would be caught in no time. However, in reality, they didn't even have a single suspect, let alone the culprit. The authorities were still investigating it, however, slowly.
それでは今日のところは失礼いたします。街中に学生さんが多いようですので、ヒシア、とっても恥ずかしい。
Alright, thank you, Hisha. You've been of great use to me, as always, because you are best girl, and you get your job done.
よく調べてくれた。それから、シア。
あちらの準備は滞りなく進めております。ご安心ください。
やはり君は完璧なメイドだな。
I agree. Can't wait for her route. It's gonna be so good. Ishia bowed and left. Eru remained silent for a while after. I think the only route that will be as good as Hishia's route, you know, maybe Saku's route will be good because, you know, there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on in that, and we're gonna get a lot of secrets. But I think the other one that would have been good was the Tokido route. And I still hold to that because I think it would be great. Even if the story like kind of gets in the way of that, it's kind of a problem. I think it would have been great. Like if we put aside the fact that she did what she did. I think it would have been fun.
どうかっていうか、わからないです。サクが学園外にピュッピュ出てたらしくて、それも変な事件を調べてるとか。
私にもそれは何とも言い難いな。
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. Couldn't tell you.
メイドさんが嘘をついてる可能性は
No? How dare you accuse Hishia?
シアは信頼できる次女だよ。
I should throw you into the river for saying that. I did not doubt the results of Hishia's investigations in the least. It seems Saku regularly left the academy to look into the mysterious incident 206, but for what purpose, though?
学園外での要因から学園内で失踪事件。謎ミステリーですね。
多少はというところだ。サクが今どこにいるか心当たりはあるかね。
居場所はわかりません。端末に連絡を入れれば合流するのは簡単だと思いますよ。
Alright. I'd expect Eru not to want to tell Saku, so her response was most unexpected. Had she started to panic, perhaps?
サクのことになると君は素直になるのだね。
自分はいつでも素直です。
If that was true, then she was an even stranger girl than I presumed.
サクと合流するのは得策ではないよ。この場所は下手をするとスクールにいる時以上に厄介かもしれないのだから。
どういう意味ですか？
現在奥島市内には起動状態の HMI が50人はいる。見失った獲物を借り出すために全能を集中している。
どこに目があるかわからない？
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Academy especially is the one watching us. The Academy was similar in that regard, but that place was special. Dystopian images of people being kept under control with explosive collars were already a thing of the past. Bleeding-edge surveillance networks made it nigh impossible for a person to detect when they were being spied on. Within the walls of the Academy, all the services and devices students used, as well as the information they accessed, were recorded. It didn't stop at merely recording what they saw on the internet from their dorm, it also recorded when they left their devices, what route they took, and who they interacted with. The Academy analyzed the large swaths of data they gathered to run maintenance and predictions in order to manage all HMIs and keep them under their watchful eye, which was a nigh impossible task. There was virtually no such thing as privacy for those within the academy, but the students lived their lives blissfully unaware that this was all going on. The law enforcement by the crowns, the neurotic security, strict rules, and clear-cut restrictions all worked in tandem with one another, while hidden from the public eye using cutting-edge tech, such as the info layer AR. It was all for the sake of lowering stress levels with HMIs, and thereby preventing unnecessary Halo activation. The Academy was a textbook example of how to control and manage a population of people through mass surveillance.
我々だけならともかく、策の安全を考えるなら、接触はスクールに戻ってから適切な機会を見計らった方がいいだろう。
I don't know, I have a feeling something big's gonna happen while we're out here. In there, the likelihood of us being observed by other Halos, which we couldn't notice ourselves, was significantly lower.
それに帰る前にいくつか調べておきたいこともできた。
そういうことなら自分の出番ですね。ジモッピーの持つナビ力を見せてやりましょう。
Alright, Eru, go ahead. Eru's help was actually more useful than she initially asserted. As a local, she was extremely familiar with the land, and despite her unique personality, she also had great social skills, making it easy for her to get information out of people. The aura she exuded, if that was a proper word for it, pulled people in before they realized, making them play along, and that was true for myself as well. I had Eru lead me to the scene of the incident 206 that Hishi had mentioned. I followed her small back to the footpath running parallel to the Furumachi River, which was south of the station. An occasional boat passed by as we walked down it. The scene was so peaceful and tranquil that I almost yawned. However, no matter how peaceful a scene, there was countless tragedies behind it. Peace was a result of ignorance and absent-mindedness. It was comical and unreasonable, but that was the rightful shape of the world of man. I found myself reaching for the lapis lazuli on my chest once more. The blue gem had originally belonged to my late sister. To Narita, it was both a sacred tombstone and a symbol of an oath. Oh, okay. I don't think they've actually mentioned that it was hers. Or maybe they did, and it was just such a little dialogue that I just didn't pay attention to it. Because I've always wondered why he keeps that on his person. Had I become more emotional because of Eru? The impression she gave matched what I lost, awakening old memories.
あれが現場です。
Eru pointed at the side of a brick building toward a small parking
何か
lot.
ありますか？
今さら新発見はないだろう。3年以上も前の事件だからね。
Yeah, if it's been 3 years, like, what are you expecting to find?
インスピレーションは地上や写真では得られない。そのためにもこの目で確かめておきたかったのだよ。
I get that, but it's not like you're gonna find anything too relevant. Maybe like some information about the area that you can use later once you get more evidence.
では、ピコンと浮かんだと？
今のところはまだだな。
There was another place we had to visit. Tea Prefecture Police.
問題ない。資料を見せてもらいたい。
問題ない。
Hold up. So he just directly got his way by using his halo. I'm still so lost at what his halo is. I'm really trying to figure it out. Because we already know with like Soriko's power that there's some crazy halos out there like that can really do some wild things, like literally like changing the outcome of events and like planning them out. I want to know what his is. I want them to describe it to me so I can really understand it.
よろしく頼む。
He seems very influential on people. The case officer went to the document room and brought me everything related to Incident 206. I couldn't take them with me, of course, so I had to memorize them here.
今、何をやりましたか？
Yeah, that's what I want to freaking know.
企業秘密だ。
Trade secret. Okay, that's code for I used my halo.
成田はタイプハムレットのはず。
Narita, huh? You're supposed to be a physical influence type. It wouldn't surprise me if he was some kind of HMI that could use multiple types or had multiple halos. Maybe like since he's gone around and traveled so much, maybe he's like picked up on different ones.
私と
Oh, I'm
しては
dying to know.
君がそれを知っている方が驚きだな。どうやって調べたの？もちろん私は言った覚えはないが。
自分ソーシャルハッキングが得意なのです。クレシュフ効果って知っていますか？
確か演出理論の類ではなかったかな。
半分当たりとしておきましょう。成田も不得意な分野はありますか？ちょっといい気味です。映画は編集でカットを並べ替えますけど、同じシーンの映像でも並べ方次第で個々のシーンの与える印象や意味が変わってしまうという話です。
Okay, I mean, I get what you're saying in filmmaking, you know, like people use like the tone and color of a scene, or like the music, you know, or the editing. You know, you can make something that maybe was happy before into a scene that's like kind of sad or scary or dark. But I'm trying to figure out how you're relating this to this finding out my Halo.
意味を作り出しているのはシーンではなく見ている観客自身ということかね。
Okay, so you're saying like I can present you the same scene, but in the way I present it, you the viewer take it differently.
グッド。つまりプリチーすぎるエルと出会った世間の平たいマニアどもは天使を見出して無意識にひれ伏してしまうのです。
Eru, you're getting a little off topic here.
最後の説明だけは話半分に聞いても。
Still, there was no doubt that she wasn't to be underestimated. Alright, y'all. I think I'm going to end it here because we've gone quite a bit now. And I want to make sure I save enough time because I feel like there's got to be some kind of a big event coming up. Like, there's no way we're going to go through this whole practical exam and nothing happens. Like, it's been too long since another big event. And I'm anticipating it, and I want to see what's going to go on. I'm, like, really curious to see what's going to happen with, what is her name? Tai, or Tei, Hiroshima, or something like that. But anyways, and we also have to figure out what's going on with Saku, because apparently Saku's doing crazy stuff, too, by herself. And you know some stuff's going to go down. I've heard this route's good, so I'm holding my breath. So far, it's been... It started off strong and then got really slow. But we've been getting a lot of information, which is nice. I just want answers, okay? But... yeah, it's going to be good. So anyways, guys. Hope you've been enjoying Eru's route so far. I think next episode is going to be really nice. I'm really excited about it. And I hope you guys are looking forward to it. So I shall see you in the next episode.